live from twitch.tv. It's Vtuber Talk. I'm your host, Jay. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We definitely didn't just have 15 minutes of technical difficulties because my system decided to just go totally on the fritz at the last minute. Welcome in, Alphena. I'm so happy to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
I can't even keep this up. But Alphena, like I mentioned, you have one of the best hats in VTubing. Where did the hat inspiration come from? Were there any, hats in media that you used as reference?
No, actually, this my entire design is purely original. It's based off of my own persona that I've had for years as an artist. Typically, artists have like personas to identify themselves as, and my model is essentially just that. And the I guess like when I wanted to go fully into like the VTubing thing, I decided to fully embrace the witchiness and get a big hat. Obviously it needed to be big, and I was like, okay, but I want like, you know, like a void theme, like with stars and moon and stuff. Okay, can I make my hat a portal? So I started like, you know, throwing ideas at Iron Vertex, who are the folks that worked on my model, and they said, yeah, we can make something pretty cool with your hat. And there it is. The rest is history.
There you go. And yes, that Iron Vertex just considered the gold standard in model creation for good reason. That they do incredible work, and that frankly at this point the most difficult thing is getting a spot on their list, that they cannot handle the demand. They've scaled as much as they can while keeping their quality bar extraordinarily high. I know they actually moved recently a number of their members so that they're actually based out of Japan. And they've been doing so well, and it's been really cool to see. Just obviously there's been so much growth and change in the VTubing community and industry at large over the past couple years, and that it's not just the VTubers themselves growing, but the artists and the riggers growing, and to see a group like IV really grow up is very exciting in its own regard, and that I feel like we don't get to see those stories as much.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy for them. Like I'm even shocked that I got like a spot. Like I think it was 3 years ago that I contacted them, and like I knew that the demand was pretty high. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. They're picking designs that they find interesting. Let's give it a go. And yeah, sure enough, I got an email back, and I don't think I ever really want to, like, their prices have gotten steep, but that's normal because of the quality they put out and because of the demand. But I don't see myself ever wanting to move away from Iron Vertex. Like even my 2.0 model that I'm going to be releasing hopefully in June is going to be done with them as well.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I feel like that once you have, just in general, if you find a rigger or artist that really speaks to you and that you feel has done a good job with your vision for things, that why move elsewhere unless you absolutely need to? And when you are able to get something of this quality, that after that you're less likely to compromise, unless once again there's that absolute need to. So I'm glad that you've been able to keep that up with them, that they've been able to keep up in general. Like I said, it's been so cool to see with the proliferation of VTubing, that it has really given rise to these sub-industries, and that you think about all the folks that are able to do full-time content creation now. There's just as many people who are able to do full-time art now, full-time rigging, full-time graphic design, that there's so many jobs. Like, I hate to get sort of economical on you here, but just that it's given rise to so many different things and so many people's passions that otherwise, they might have had to get jobs that do not resonate with them as much, and that there's been so many cool opportunities that have been able to actually flourish just because of VTubing, because there's so many more visual demands and technical demands of it that go beyond normal streaming and content creation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People say that like the VTuber sphere has become extremely saturated, which yes, there are a lot of VTubers now, but the creativity is all as original as you make it, you yourself make it. So there's an infinite amount of things that you can do with your stream, with your character, with your lore, if you want to go as deep as that. Like, there are so many awesome things that you can do as a VTuber that, like, it's going to be difficult for you to find two VTubers that are identical, because there's just so much that you can do with it.
Yeah, and that's something that I tell folks who don't understand VTubing as much, that they say, oh, I feel like the VTuber market's getting saturated every time I see, HoloLive or another agency debut things. And I say, that's like saying the content creator sphere is oversaturated, that VTubing is not, I compare it to anime, that people who don't understand anime think that anime is a genre. Anime is not a genre, anime is a medium. VTubing is not a genre. It is not a category past it being a medium for content creation. That it's just like any other streamer, it's just like any other content creator, with a couple of extra steps and a couple of bells and whistles for sure. But that's like saying, oh, Twitch is oversaturated.
Yeah,
no,
pretty much.
And especially given that even now VTubing represents a relatively small proportion. I have no idea statistically where it winds up, but my spitball guess with absolutely no true data in front of me is that VTubing has to represent a percent, maybe. I feel like that's almost generous because of how many users there are on Twitch.
Oh, yeah.
No, you can't call VTubing saturated unless you were calling content creation and streaming itself saturated.
Yeah, exactly. Because, again, like you said, VTubing is a medium. It is not a genre. VTubing is part of the content creation sphere. It is not separate from it. It is just a different way of creating content, is all it is.
Yeah, Melkor in chat says, here's so many about these massive face cam streamers I know nothing about, and there's so much out there. And it's kind of weird and funny that those of us who find ourselves in the rabbit hole like this, that naturally just there's so much out there. There's no way of being aware of every piece of media, every content creator. But that since we are, I don't want to say siloed, but that generally speaking, if you're looking into VTubers, that you're going to be curating your feed and your searches to that, and that we are still very much in the minority of things. So when you see these big face cam streamers or other content creators that are, breaking records, reaching 1 million subscribers on Twitch, and you're like, oh, never heard of them. Good for them, though. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many, I think a lot of the current, top streamers on Twitch right now, or even, the, biggest YouTubers and stuff, I am so out of the loop with that, and I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. Several million followers, several million views, that's great. I have never heard of this person.
It's like I feel like I'm the one under the rock in some ways, but that sort of comes with the territory in general of, like I said, you can't be aware of everything out there, and that we found our niche, and that we get to say we were the ones that knew about Iron Mouse and Hololive and such before they got as big as they are now, and they're still, just now starting to break into public consciousness. That actually, as of time of broadcast, Iron Mouse just won last night for the second year in a row VTuber of the Year at the Streamer Awards, but that's coming hot off the heels of her winning just Content Creator of the Year, Streamer of the Year at the Game Awards. And that was just sort of, I think we will look back and say that's sort of a paradigm shift moment. I do not think she will be the last VTuber to win Content Creator of the Year, but that was a big public consciousness moment.
That's amazing. And she's so deserving of it, because she has she's definitely propelled a lot of what VTubing is now forward. She is such a huge face in the VTubing community, and she has so many, friends and contacts outside of the VTubing sphere, that it's because of her, a lot of people are, beginning to, meet and see and kind of dip their toes into the VTubing content.
Yeah.
Side. Yeah.
It's weird to think of just sort of where we were as a community and where she was as a content creator even 2 years ago. That certainly she's been in on the ground floor, that she has earned her way up. She has worked her butt off. Good
Oh,
Lord.
yeah.
But then on top of it, you just take her whole story with her immune disease and the fact that she has, gone through the ringer, quite frankly, in terms of medical situations.
Yeah.
And that she's a super inspiring story on top of everything else, and that I'm sure that someday we're going to get a Iron Mouse documentary, and that there's a couple of documentaries I want to see out there from VTubing. One, I want to see the story of Iron Mouse. One, I want to see the story of Cover Corp through the lens of Iago in particular. And that there's going to be so many, and that I know actually Domo made a documentary about, I believe it was Shy Lily, if memory serves. And that was super cool. And there's so many stories. That's part of what VTuber Talk is all about for me. That just, I'm a bard at heart, Alphena. Let me tell you, I just love stories. This is all just I like talking with people. I like getting stories. I like conversations. That's all this is for. This is tailor-made. There's a reason I shoehorned myself, or rather, not shoehorned, but sort of painted myself into a corner. And I made my whole brand reliant on the generosity of others, and that I'm not really into doing normal content creation, that I'm very comfortable here as a talk show host because I love stories. I love hearing about people's experiences, the things they love, and that, obviously, Iron Mouse and everybody else aside, let's talk more about you. But
sure, of course.
So you have the Void Witch aesthetic, but that very much does tie into the things that you like as well, that you're really into horror games, that you like fantasy. Is there, I suppose, sort of a beginning for those interests for you? Do you recall a particular game or piece of media that really sparked it for you?
Okay, so horror games, it's more like horror in general. It's always been something that I really liked ever since I was like a teenager, and I feel like I'm not the only one. I feel like when you're a teenager, you kind of want to watch horror movies to kind of show to your friends, like, oh yeah, I'm not scared of this, like, yeah, let's go watch Paranormal Activity in theaters. We're totally able to do that. But I guess it kind of just stuck. I just kept enjoying horror, and I wanted to play horror games, but I think because I immerse myself in games so much, I have a very hard time playing horror games on my own, which is why I decided to make it a streaming thing. So all the horror games I want to play, I stream them, because at least I have someone with me.
It's sort of like playing with the lights on, and that talking through it, that it almost, it doesn't necessarily prevent your immersion, but it, I suppose, keeps sort of that part of your brain just sort of in the back of your mind, since you are multitasking mentally, that you're not able to get so deep that you're able to necessarily get as scared as you would if you were just totally losing yourself, that there is nothing but you in the game. And that sort of slight degree of mental separation, I very much understand, because that's me as well, that I don't normally consume horror. I don't play horror much, but I love watching horror streams.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's a lot of folks that like that as well. Like, there are horror games that they've heard of that they would, love to play, love to, like watch, but because they're unable to play the game themselves, I feel like it's great to have horror streamers, because then they can, experience it like vicariously through them. And I just think that's great, and I like being able to provide that for folks. And yeah, no, genuinely, that's pretty much where the whole horror thing like started. It's just always been a thing that I've liked ever since I was a teenager. As far as games go, so I'm like the only girl in my family, basically. So when you're raised with a bunch of guys around you, you kind of just start adapting and adopting those hobbies. So yeah, I just played a lot of video games because that's what my brothers did, and that's what like my dad did as well. And my mother was not super keen on it, but she kind of couldn't really like control it at some point. Like when we were all there and we all just wanted to like, you know, play a game, and like my dad was encouraging it, I think my mom kind of just gave up. So
makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, like I mentioned, I'm not. Oh, and of course the model is now switching. 1 second, because I know what happened there. What a day! What a day! Let me tell you. Why is this on? Oh God! Don't tell me my cable's glitching out. Give me 2 seconds. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. You're all good. It's part of the game, folks. The amount of times that I have just straight up forgotten to plug in my iPhone. And I just go live and my character is staring directly into the camera. Just a 1,000-yard stare. It's become kind of a bit of a running gag in my stream, where folks are kind of just like waiting for me to like go waiting for me to just like get off my starting soon screen and being like, oh, is Alfie going to forget her phone again? Oh, no, she didn't forget this time. So they're kind of expecting it at this point. I feel like it's something that isn't something that you should feel like too embarrassed about. I feel like I've mentioned this before, but like VTubing comes with scuff, and that's something that you kind of just have to get used to.
You know,
and
I'm getting impressed with my own scuff at this point. I stood up because, okay, I noticed that the battery on my phone was draining, and I realized, okay, it's not plugged in as it should be. It's not charging. There's something wrong with the cable. That's fine. I have other cables. I put my headphones down. I go to the other side of the room where I have my spare cable. Get the cable, plug it in. We're plugged in. That's fine. I put my headset back on. I'm now only hearing through the right ear of my headset. What
is going on?
How is this happening?
What is going on
How does that break? Because it was earlier that the output was only going through one. That's fine. But now just the left ear of my headset isn't working. It was working when I took it off to grab the cable, Alphena, I swear.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
This is... like, now I'm even double checking my own thing, just... because it'd be one thing if, okay, you know, I changed something, but I didn't even change the audio settings. That was me plugging in the phone on a USB.
Yep.
A separate USB.
Sometimes you can't,
like, everything's falling apart. I'm so...
It's all good. There's some things you just can't question. Things just happen, and they're bad, and then eventually they start working again for some weird reason.
I got it.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, thank goodness. That was because that fortunately wasn't going to actually impact the output to the stream. This was just in my ear, and it was really disorienting. I noticed that when I double checked the jack on my audio mixer, and that was fine. It's like, wait a minute, what about the side of the jack on the headset itself? When I took the headset off, it apparently jostled the cable just enough to slightly come out to that amount where, you know, it's not actually getting the signal on both ears. It's only getting one, but it's there. So, thank goodness.
Goodness.
I heard my life flash before my eyes right there, or before my ears. I don't know how that works, but it was scary, Alfie, and I was like, how is this happening midstream? Nothing changed there.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you at all. Like, I think, because it's especially stressful. Like, it's already stressful enough when you're rushing to try to fix things like before stream, but it's especially stressful when you're like live, because then you're like, oh, you've got people watching you, like,
and at least I have a wonderful guest here who's able to help me vamp for time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Also, Saxon, thank you so much for the follow, and Just Maven, you followed a while back. Apologies for missing that. Thank you so much. Welcome on in. But Yes. Back to horror, anyways, and not the horrors of technical scuff.
Mm-mm.
That would be a really meta horror game, wouldn't it?
Oh my goodness.
Like, it would be one of those sort of, like, I don't know what the proper term is for the type of, like, chaotic game where you're sort of running around having to put out mini fires that pop up in different places. But just now I'm imagining a horror game of technical difficulties.
Oh, it would be so anxiety-inducing.
That's the thing, though, that you specifically develop and target this for content creators, for streamers, and that it's a game all about just having to deal with tech stuff. That would be so meta and so, like, I wonder if people would love it or hate it, because it would be... You know, is that getting too real at that point? Would people not want to play because they're like, I deal with this in real life. Why am I making content out of it secondhand? But I also feel like it'd be such a good joke.
I think it would work because you have games like like those cooking games, like that you have to take orders. It's the same thing. It's a management thing. You have to be fast. You have to like get those orders out. Your clients are asking for specific things. It's the same principle. Except you're not like giving food to clients. You are fixing certain parts of the stream.
Exactly. That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
But so it becomes sort of a management sim, but also, like I said, in its own way, this horror game of, okay, it's going wrong. You might not know why it's wrong. That sort of even almost like Five Nights at Freddy's type of thing. Of, all right, you're glancing around in all these different directions, trying to see where things are going wrong. All right, it's fine now. When did that break? How did that break?
Oh my god, and like the more things break, the more chat starts speeding up. Like, can you imagine?
Oh my god. Like, this is free ideas for any programmers or game developers in chat. Go ahead. Here you go. Like, there's a chance to make just a viral game right here. This would be the Twitch meta for a good week and a half at least.
It would. Oh my goodness.
This feels like, if you design it to be just frustrating enough, that it could be that type of combination of Five Nights at Freddy's, but also just a sort of stream rage game a la Getting Over It or Jump King, things like that.
Yeah.
I had my first experience with Getting Over It recently, actually, because that was a reward for the recent charity stream, and it lived up to its name. I was not able to beat it. I thought I had gotten pretty far, and was like, oh, because I've watched it being played a lot over the years, so I knew the general layout, and I was like, all right, I think I made it, if memory serves, to maybe like the halfway point, a little bit over halfway point. No, I didn't.
Yeah, have you seen speed runs of that?
I have. I've had past guests that I know have done in like 12 minutes, 9 minutes, and it's just mind-boggling.
I have seen, okay, I think the world record for Getting Over It is like under
4-ish, I think.
Yeah, something like that. And when you look at it, the guy is literally just spinning the hammer, like the sledgehammer, like super fast, and knows exactly what ledges to do, but it's like a millisecond, like a split second. It's so insane.
The issues that I had was, it felt like the controls were changing over time. That I would go to recreate a swing or a jump, and that it wouldn't behave the same. Or the more frustrating thing is that at certain points where I'm trying to just sort of position myself properly and move the hammer to get something, that suddenly would swing wildly, and that it's probably my mouse being slippery, but that it just sort of, all right, I'm moving slowly, and then, oh wow, it just sort of flew, and that my velocity was incredible, and
it's very finicky. It's a very finicky game, I think.
Yes, it was indeed at time. Again, I suppose that's sort of a horror game in its own right, but on to more proper horror games. I know that some of your favorites are Silent Hill and Resident Evil. What about those games really resonate with you?
Okay, so the big thing for me in horror is that I really enjoy horror that is more atmospheric. Not something that relies too much like on jump scares. I talk about this every time that like the subject of horror comes up. But jump scares is not horror. Jump scare is not you being scared, it is you being startled, and there's such
Yep.
a big difference between those. When you get like a loud noise in your ear, you're going to jump.
It's a natural thing.
Yeah,
That's just a human impulse reaction.
exactly.
It's not an
Exactly.
emotional reaction. It is
Nope.
like an actual physiological one.
Yep. And the thing is, I don't get scared. I don't get freaked out or anything when that happens. I get mad. I get annoyed. And it's like, when I'm watching a movie and it relies on jump scares, first of all, you start seeing it, you start noticing a pattern, you can predict when it's going to happen.
Then it becomes almost a game for me.
Exactly.
Of just, okay, I'm trying to beat the movie to the punch. I'm trying to outsmart it and know where it's going to be.
Yep, exactly. And like when it's predictable and it happens, you're just like, yeah, okay, I saw it coming from a mile away. Then you just don't care about the movie anymore. And you're just like, okay.
Then it's, like I said, it's a game at that point. The mental game of, all right, can I beat the movie, so to speak? Yep.
And that translates into games as well. There are a lot of games that do rely on jump scares. Some of them are okay. I'll give them a pass. For example, I think it has happened once or twice in the one of the like a couple of the Chilla's Art games, like the Convenience Store or like Night Shift and stuff like that. Like those games are great. I love them. I love those games. There are a couple of instances where there are jump scares, but they don't feel like a cheap jump scare. It feels like, no, it fits in this situation. So, and it builds enough tension, like you're already terrified because like it's not as said a game that only relies on jump scares. The atmosphere and like the setting and everything going on around you is scary enough that you're already extremely tense without any of the jump scares having happened. And then like just out of nowhere, you're not expecting it, boom, it just like hits you with one, and it's like, okay, that was deserved because it built up to it.
I feel like jump scares are a limited resource for a good game, that a bad game will use them just flagrantly, they will use them everywhere, they will overuse them. I feel like a good horror game will have 1 to 3.
Exactly.
That just ideally, I feel like 1 or 2 obviously spread out just far enough so that mentally you're able to sort of leave it behind just long enough to forget about the last one, to not expect the next one. That if you have the 1, the 2, that you're able to then get a very good, genuine reaction, have it build off of other things and be sort of a payoff to other underlying tension, not just loud noise in your ear.
Yeah, exactly. And oh goodness, I just lost my train of thought. What was I gonna say? Yeah, that's why Silent Hill. That's why I enjoy Silent Hill games so much. I think the only ones I've played, I'm kind of working my way through them, and I know that folks say that there are some that are better than others, but I have played some of the like early ones. I think I played 2 and 3. I don't think I played the first one, or maybe it's the inverse. I can't remember quite well. But they do not rely on jump scares. It's just atmospheric. You're kind of just making your way through an area that is completely desolate. And occasionally there's these weird friggin' creatures that you can't fight them because you're gonna waste your friggin' ammo that you really desperately need for actual like combat situations. So you have to run away, or at least try to like shove them out of the way. And that's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, especially when it comes to resource management, that there's such a visceral level of inherent underlying stress that comes from just knowing, okay, I need to protect myself, but I have to be very, very mindful of everything that I do, every bullet that I spend, whether it be something of, you have weapon durability sometimes, and just knowing, okay, when do I actually shoot, when do I actually swing the weapon versus when do I just run and try and conserve that resource for something bigger and better. And then it's the mental, okay, well, is there going to be something bigger and better? Because you always imagine there will be. And that in and of itself, just the fear of the unknown, quite literally, it is a very natural and sort of stacking level of horror there.
Yes. And I feel like Silent Hill does that super duper well. I have heard that there are weaker games. Like, I think there's Silent Hill, The Room. I think that's the 4th one in the series. I've not played it, but I have seen a few people, like, play it here and there. I've just seen a couple of scenes. And I mean, I'd still be down to play it. Like, I like forming an opinion for myself. If people tell me it's like, oh man, it's kind of the weaker one in the series, it's like,
but then you sort of go in almost expecting and looking for the weaknesses. I don't like that.
Yeah, exactly. I prefer to make my own opinion on something. I think one of the few times that I've fully listened to people was when I was going through the Devil May Cry series, and they told me 2 does not exist. 2 does not exist. So I was like, oh, why? And they're like, it's don't do it. Just do not play 2. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll believe you.
Yeah.
And I think there was was there like a lot of like, not controversy, but like, was that the one where it was like not Dante or something that was...
I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay.
But I'm familiar with similar situations where there's just this one installment where people will say, perhaps not universally, but that there's a very prevailing opinion of just skip this one. That it's not even, this is a weaker one, or this one did some things that's a little weird, but people like, all right, just don't bother with this. It's not necessary either from a plot standpoint or that there were other technical things that were unnecessary. Usually it ends up being actually from a plot standpoint. I've found that people are, okay, if you are intimidated by this big sprawling series, you don't need to worry about all the games. Don't worry about this one, that one. These are the main ones that are real, that for people who are trying to get people into a series. That and I am very, I don't even want to say guilty, I will say that I use this strategy myself, that to make it feel more approachable, that they will tell you not even, all right, this one's weak, but just don't worry about this one. Don't worry about it, that you can enjoy this, and get the bulk, if not really truly the entirety of the series of enjoyment by going through this more efficient route even, that it's in some ways not even telling them that it's a wholly unenjoyable, you need to skip it because you're just going to be miserable if you play it. But here's the efficient way if you want to really just have a good time and not necessarily get bogged down. Here you go.
Yep. No, pretty much. Like, especially since like a lot of the games that people say like, oh, you know what, just skip that one. Like, it's because, like you said, it eventually just does not affect the plot at all, or it even like just gets retconned like completely. It makes no difference to like the later series. So no, I totally get that. I think there's, okay, so for example, there's I have not watched One Piece, okay?
Don't worry, neither have I, because the exact reason that I just described of it is a Goliath that I love anime. I watch I watch a good 5, 10, sometimes like a dozen shows a season because I love anime. That's what I do. I watch anime and I watch VTubers. But I'd rather watch 112 episode series than watch 1,200 episodes of One Piece.
Yeah, like, and I think they have like not like an abridged version, but like there's One Piece out there that kind of cuts out all the filler.
Yeah, and I respect that as a project, but it's still so much.
It's still a lot. It is so much, and I fully understand people saying that like, oh, but it's so good, and it's like,
I know I understand. I know it's amazing.
Yeah, and I get that. I absolutely get that. But those folks they've been growing up with that show ever since it like started.
If you're on the ground floor and watching that, I'm caught up with, My Hero Academia, with a bunch of other shows that have been going on 3, 4, 5 seasons. And if you are watching it as it airs, that's fine. If you're in at the start and not having to sort of look in the distance and see that daunting mountain of episodes that you feel, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need to watch all these eventually, and that's just so much. But if it's just, all right, I'm watching one episode a week, and new season's coming out, I'm really looking forward to it, that there's nothing to catch up on, there's no backlog, there is nothing intimidating, because then it's just one episode at a time.
Exactly. Like it becomes such a, like, when you watch anime, you don't want it to become a task. You don't want it to become a chore to do. And when your only goal in watching an anime is to be caught up to everyone else, like, how are you supposed to enjoy it at that point?
And I think even the creators realize that, which is why I think next season they're starting a new one called The One Piece. Just throw the word "the" in front of the current title.
Really?
And that they are starting from the beginning with, modern current anime and production standards. It's being done, I think it's Studio Wit. It's a studio that's done very good stuff, that they have, this is high quality, but they are just starting from the beginning again. And from all indications, it seems to just be for people like you and me, that this is their way of saying, okay, well, if you don't want to have to worry about the backlog, that's fine. We're just going to restart, and we're going to make it look really pretty and good from the get-go, and I assume there will be some cleaning, perhaps some streamlining. It might be one of those things where it's fitted a bit more to the manga, probably.
Yeah, but cuts out a lot of the filler.
Yeah, but that this doesn't appear to be some side story thing. It doesn't appear to be a alternate retelling. It seems to be not even a reboot, but just, we're restarting, because I think they know at this point that that's where they're missing a lot of the audience for how big One Piece is, that people that have the approach and sort of mentality that you and I have are not uncommon, and that they've gotten wise to it and they've figured out the workaround. And I'm actually very excited, because yes, I will start from episode 1 with everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And you can experience it like without all the excess stuff that doesn't really affect the story. And they did something kind of similar with that's something that I'm kind of like, I guess, scared for, because they did something similar with Sailor Moon.
With Crystal.
Yes. And I love Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is my jam. It's been something that I adored since I was a child. And like I think there's like maybe like nearly somewhere around 300 episodes total of Sailor Moon.
The original series I think had 200, 250. It was a lot.
Yes, it was a lot. It was quite a bit. And again, it suffered from a lot of filler, a lot of stuff that was just not in the manga.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that it does not follow the manga, and that I did not grow up with Sailor Moon, but I paid attention. I saw when Crystal came out. I think I watched the first season and a half of it before I sort of fell off. But from what I understand, that Crystal very much adhered to the source material. The issues that it had, at least from what I saw and from folks that were really, really into Sailor Moon, is it released in 2014 when CG was questionable, and that they leaned on CG for the transformation sequences a lot, which wasn't great. And apparently in the later seasons there may have been other things that it seemed like, for the most part, most diehard Sailor Moon fans were not entirely displeased with it, but that it sort of straddled that line of, okay, this is good, but it's not great.
Yeah, like, so I'm not completely caught up on Crystal, but I want to catch up on it. I watched the first 2 seasons completely as they were coming out. It was painful. It was extremely painful to watch, because even like certain parts of the 2D animation was really off. And I don't know if it's because it was like, new animators, which it happens like, sometimes new animators like, need to be brought in. They need to work on
Everyone
stuff.
has
like
to start
that's how they
somewhere.
learn. Exactly.
But you don't necessarily put your new folks on one of the most important historical anime of all time.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of felt, like burned by. Like, why would you do this? Like, I grew up with this, and you kind of, you followed the story exactly. Super proud of you for that. what the hell did you do to the visuals, you know?
Okay, yeah, because that's sort of what I gathered, that a couple folks that I spoke with said that certain parts of the manga was a little bit compressed, perhaps a little bit brisk, but that by and large it did stick to the source material and that people really didn't have any problems with it, and it was just twofold of production values being a bit sketchy, and also that if memory serves, it had a fair break between a couple of seasons.
Yes.
And that people just sort of naturally fell off of it, not necessarily out of distaste or displeasure from it, but of just that since it wasn't stellar, that they did not necessarily feel that drive, that excitement when each new season came out to continue, and that it was more a natural drop-off than one of frustration.
Yeah, no, people genuinely, like, because there was such a huge gap between, I can't remember between which seasons, but between seasons, there was such a huge gap at some point that people just forgot. People just forgot. They weren't excited for the next one because they were like, well, it's going to be more of, like, you know, what we've been getting so far. Yeah. So it's like, all right.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just saying that, like, apparently they upped their game in the later seasons of Sailor Moon Crystal. I don't know if it's because it was taken up by a different studio or they put another, like, batch of animators on it that are, like, you know, more used to it. But, and I think they don't have 3D transformation scenes. They turned them back into 2D. Yes.
Ooh, I didn't hear about that. That would be very nice.
Yes.
So I can sort of respect them trying. The 3D didn't look... It didn't look awful, but it was rough. And
it was extremely rough.
I can kind of respect the try, but at the same time, I feel like that was something they should have noticed and accepted in pre-production of, okay, yeah, we got this new technology that wasn't around when the original series aired. Let's experiment with it. Nothing wrong with that. I can totally respect studios saying, let's try this. Let's see, does it work? But I feel like they should have realized, for what is supposed to be literally the most important sequences, the sequence that you are going to play dozens of times, the one that is actually built to be efficient, that part of why transformation sequences became so ubiquitous was because it was a cost-cutting measure. Because it was, you made this one really gorgeous sequence that you could buy 30 to 90 seconds of screen time with, episode over episode, which would then free up your animators to do other stuff. That it's meant to be the best thing you can put out because you're going to use it over and over.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then they were using this rough sequence over and over.
Yeah, it's such a shame. But, and like, I wonder, like, why? Because, like, there's no way that not a single person looked at that during
maybe we can do better. Maybe that doesn't maybe it does look a little uncanny valley. Maybe
there had to have been someone that said something. I don't believe that nobody just said nothing, you know, like there's no way.
I feel like it may have been an issue of they probably had a deadline and were just like, we can't,
we gotta go with it.
But that would also explain why they might have gone and fixed it or changed it to not be 3D in the later ones. That they were like, okay, we're between seasons, we're not under the gun at this moment in time, so let's just redo this from the ground up, and we're gonna pretend the other thing never happened.
Yeah. Man, like I need to watch the later seasons of Sailor Moon. I think it's done. I think Crystal is over now, and I think the last one they didn't even do a season with it. They made a movie. Yeah, exactly.
But I remember when I heard about that, because it was a really big deal, and it was coupled along with Viz Media getting the license to the original series of Sailor Moon, which had lapsed some time prior, like probably a decade prior, and that they announced that they were redubbing it from episode 1 ground up, unedited, that no, they aren't cousins.
I heard about that. Yeah.
You know, all of the episodes that were cut just for various reasons over the years were redone, that it was proper, and that I was so excited for the Sailor Moon fandom because that, even more than Crystal, felt like the biggest deal. That felt like sort of the fulfillment of a promise that many people, frankly, expected would never be fulfilled, because there's, even now, really no precedent for a studio to go and redub material. That if the series is rebooted a la Crystal, that yeah, someone's going to do Crystal, and that if Crystal had been done more properly in terms of content as it was, that you'd expect that. But I can't really think of another series, certainly not one to the scale of Sailor Moon, which, like we said, 200, 300 episodes, going back and not just redubbing, but retreating the scripts.
Yeah. I think, okay, so the Deke dub of Sailor Moon from
90s, early 2000s.
Original series, yeah, the 90s. It was so goofy.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so goofy, you could not take it seriously. The main actress, like, she, like, that voiced Sailor Moon, she, like, look, I have nothing against any of those like voice actors. Those VAs, they did their job as they were expected to do it.
They were given those scripts. Yeah. They didn't write that. They did what they could with the material they were presented.
Exactly. It's just when you look at the original version where, it's serious situations. It's like, there's a lot of like scenes that are very emotional and sad and gripping, and like you feel like genuine like fear for some of the characters. And then you look at the Deke dub and you're like, this is so freaking silly. You cannot take it seriously at all.
The entire 5th season didn't originally air under Deke because it's so dark. It is no longer a children's show by the time season 5 rolls around. That it wasn't until Viz did their redub that was the first dub of Sailor Moon Stars, the 5th season. Yeah. Because if memory serves, the cold open to the first episode of season 5 is Sailor Moon watching all of her friends die.
Yep, pretty much. She's seen her friends die like several times over.
But just that the opening scene is desolate post-apocalyptic wasteland. Her friends are like, dead or turned to stone or something, and that is how you open the season. That's not your big finale and okay, everything's about to be all right. It is, she is having visions of the end of the world and her friends dying in front of her.
Yeah, no, like when people talk about Sailor Moon and don't know anything about Sailor Moon, they think, oh, it's, kids anime, kids like magical girl anime. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. It's like fluffy and sparkly, and no,
this is a solid like young adult to adult level. That this was, if I were to use, the American movie rating system, it's solid TV 14.
Easily. Because again, like, they go through very real, like, dangerous situations, and it's the fact that like Usagi she's like, when we start, she's a 14-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine having your entire life just freaking flipped upside down and having to like save Earth multiple times?
Yep.
And seeing people die and having to suck it up because you're the only one who can fucking fix it. It's like,
and just, every other week, guess what? That social life you kind of wanted to have, Little Miss High Schooler. Actually, no, we're going to have some really traumatic experience with, let's see here. What is it for the week? Let me consult my list. Yes, some jewelry store. Like all the jewelry is like possessing women in town, and now everyone's like becoming zombies and attacking, and like there's mortal peril involved, and they are trying to kill you and capture you, presumably, and kidnap you and take you to some kingdom on the far side of the moon that you are not aware of. And guess what? Finding out time travel. You have a daughter, and the first thing this young daughter does is hold a gun to your face.
Yeah. And this daughter is with this guy that you actually despise. You've seen him. It's not your crush that you really like that works at the video game arcade. No, it's that guy's friend that you really don't like.
Surprise!
You have a kid with him. Surprise! It's like, oh, what?
Let's just dump emotional trauma on top of peril, on top of death. On it, there's so much that it is frankly a miracle that it sort of speaks to the sheer purity and resilience of Usagi that she isn't a total, just that she doesn't break mentally, because by all rights anyone should.
Yes, and like, yes, she's portrayed as a crybaby, but like, she's 14 years old. I think it's fucking normal that she would cry. Like, she's so strong. She is so freaking powerful. Like, Usagi is wildly like powerful, and people, it's kind of sad that people kind of just brush it off as like, oh, magical girl, in which the main character is crybaby, whiny, and annoying.
Mm-hmm. No, Madoka Magica was not the first time that magical girls got dark.
Nuh-uh.
Madoka did it a bit more efficiently, perhaps.
Yeah.
But, no, and that was part of, like, what I said, that Season 5 did not actually get aired, because certainly in late 90s, early 2000s, for the type of broadcast they were doing, that it was not going to fit with a young American audience. But that's also part of the thing that happened with One Piece, because remember, it had a sort of a restart redub, but it didn't do it after 200 episodes. It did it after like 50 or something.
Yeah,
because initially, one of the big things that they were trying to do is it was on public broadcast, and public broadcast in at least the US is subject to certain regulations, including ones that you can't show smoking. Remember that lollipop?
Yep.
That wasn't just a sort of a random thing. That was because in order to get on public broadcast, they couldn't show smoking. You can't show a kid in mortal peril. So all those instances of guns being pointed at a kid, that's a no-go. So we're going to have to turn them into plunger shooters, or like, people pointing their finger at somebody. That many, and not just for One Piece, but things like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, that a lot of that censorship wasn't just the licensors willy-nilly saying, oh, well, we don't think that American audiences can handle this. That was them saying at that point in time, we want to get into as many households as we can. And the way to do that is to go with these restrictions. And that I very much point to Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece in the early days, and Sailor Moon as being the vanguards and the gateways for anime in the West, that if Pokemon doesn't get onto public broadcast, which at that point in time is not ubiquitous, that you're cutting the amount of households that you're getting into probably in half, if not less.
Oh, yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, just butterfly effect of the anime industry, anime fandom growing in the US, night and day. Night and day.
Absolutely.
4Kids is the savior of anime in the US, and I will die on this hill.
Oh yeah, no, like 4Kids has done some pretty goofy stuff to the anime that they've aired, but like because of the goofy things that they have done, people know what anime is. People have been exposed to a lot more series that they normally would not have been exposed to.
And it's the same for Deke and what they did with Sailor Moon. That
exactly.
It is. I very much put it under necessary evil, but that makes it all the better, all the more exciting that after the fact, that someone was able to go and redo and say, okay, we made these changes because we needed to back in the day to ensure that this series was seen and became so formative for so many people. And now let's do it right.
Yes. And it's great. It's great that things are evolving the way that they are, because people are understanding like that you kind of tamper with the entire concept of a story if you're doing all that censorship. And I'm just really glad that they're getting redubbed, honestly. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, because I remember seeing that announcement and being like, I didn't watch Sailor Moon growing up, not because I had to, an aversion to it, but well, I wasn't in the target demographic, quite simply.
Yeah.
But I knew what it meant to so many people, and I was so excited seeing both that and Crystal, because it meant sort of just the Sailor Moon community was eating good. They had both at the same time. It was like, wow, what a renaissance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And like I was mentioning, One Piece had the same thing, and then they redid but didn't have quite the same amount, and you don't see that even now. And part of that is because it's certainly less frequent that such a redub would be necessary, that we have gotten to the point where anime is much more recognized in the West as a whole, those types of restrictions of needing to go on public broadcast isn't as necessary to get the proliferation that you needed for that back in the day, because just streaming and cable are so much more ubiquitous than the others, than it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. But it's been wild to see all of that, and that it's very exciting, because for a very long time, and even now, it's less than it used to be, but the mountain that anime has had to climb isn't just the fact that it looks different and that the content's different, but the core reason for why the content is different is that in the West, anime historically and even now is largely seen as juvenile. That animation is considered for children, or it is crude comedy. That it was either what you see on Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, or it's Comedy Central, it's Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park. It is comedy or children's fare. That there was just culturally, people really, with just very, very few noted exceptions, ever considered it to be something that you could put a dramatic story to animation, or something that would be sort of art house fare to animation. It just wasn't even mentally in the realm of possibility.
And it's such a shame, because you have like amazing stories. Like if you're talking about like a series that is more catered to like adults with a more serious tone, you've got Cowboy Bebop that is insane. The story is amazing. It's not too long either.
They ran that 26 episodes on Adult Swim for a decade.
Yeah, it's just so freaking good, and it's so sad that people will look at people who are not like used to the like anime as a whole, and you try to like get them to watch like one of these shows that that they're gonna enjoy the story. They kind of just like side eye it.
There's an inherent bias, and I am Poppy Seeds in chat saying, Studio Ghibli saying, hold my beer, I'm a cater to everyone. But even then, that they're still largely regarded as these are children's films that happen to have enough beauty that they can be enjoyed by broader audiences. But even now, like I saw The Boy and the Heron last week. It is still, the writing of Studio Ghibli is still very much aimed at children. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what they like to write. That's not them trying to cater to anything. But what I usually have to tell folks that aren't into anime is that anime is not a genre. It is not an art style. It is a point of geographic origin. And it just so happens that this point of geographic origin doesn't have the biases towards animation that we do in the West. And that they are just comfortable and creative enough to put other stories and genres to animation that we don't even consider, or that we have only started to consider. Things like Hazbin Hotel, which, well, that kind of sort of falls into the, raunchy comedy again.
Yeah.
That doesn't really even count. But you had things like Blue Eye Samurai, which was a more recent one, which has done very well. But that you're starting to see animation considered with more maturity in the West, but even now we're not there yet. We're not. We've made strides, but I feel like we're at least another decade off before you really just see animation in the West considered as another medium, a la VTubing. And I think VTubing suffers not from, frankly, I think VTubing suffers from less of a stigma in its relative space than anime as a whole. But I think that there are comparable mental hurdles that VTubing has similar to anime in the West.
Yeah. No, it definitely does. There is definitely like a connection or a bridge there. Again, it's the same thing that you've been saying. Anime is a medium, it is not a genre. VTubing is a medium, it is not a genre. It's a way or a means to tell a story.
Yep. And frankly, yes, anime is very expensive, that and animators very frankly are not paid as much as they should in Japan, but it's the type of thing that one of the go-to examples is, if Game of Thrones had been written by someone in Japan, it would be an anime. It would not have been live action.
Yeah, pretty much. And honestly, I feel it. Oh my god! Can I just say the directors just absolutely freaking botched Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
But at the same, but it's funny because you see the exact same thing happen in anime. That what happened
Yeah.
to Game of Thrones was not a symptom of any sort of cultural sensibility, censorship, or a desire to change the source material, but you have it in anime where they run out of the source material and are
Yep.
forced to do their own thing because the writer, the mangaka, what have you, doesn't have anything more, and that it's taking them longer. And Winds of Winter's been in the queue for George R.R. Martin for what, a decade now?
Oh my god, longer than that. Easily longer
it's
than
absurd.
that.
And, well, they had to do something with it. You see it with a lot of anime. You saw it back then, original FMA, and then later they made Brotherhood. That I kind of expect that they will probably try Game of Thrones again, just sort of a Sailor Moon Crystal, a Full Metal Brotherhood reboot style, very beholden to the source material once it is done. But that might not be for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
That I wish George R.R. Martin a long life and good health. That man is not young. I'm kind of scared.
No, he's not.
And just frankly, not even just as a consumer, but for the man himself, I would feel so bad if something were to happen and he were not able to finish this story, because it obviously means so much to him, that he's worked so many years on it, that I hope and I think that he realizes as well that he's not getting any younger, and that I'm hoping that he's able to get it out in a way that he is happy, comfortable, and confident in eventually.
I think with George R.R. Martin, the story is done. He has everything put on paper, but as notes, okay, so this is gonna happen.
He has the outline of it.
He has the outline.
Written the content in its detailed, extended form.
Exactly. So I'm wondering if maybe he doesn't have a backup or somebody that he trusts can follow.
I'm sure that there has to be a entire paragraph, section category in his will of, in the event of my passing, the files, the copy of the outline is here and may be viewed by this person or this subset of people that are, sort of posthumous NDA, effectively. I don't know how it works, but I'm sure that there's some legal way to make that work. But these are the people that I trust in the event that I cannot, to finalize the framework that I have set out. Here is the vault, here is the key where you will find the hidden, forbidden texts.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, he has to have that done. And I'm sure that, his publishers, his editors, they probably have forced him to do something like that.
They're not going to let that.
Absolutely not. Because when you look at George R.R. Martin and you look at all the other things that he's been doing, he looks like a goofy guy who kind of is just like, man, fucking, I do what I want.
He's having a good time. He's enjoying his life, and that's great. I respect the heck out of it. He's certainly made enough money that he does not owe us the end of Game of Thrones. He does not morally, ethically owe us anything. That as a creative, he can do whatever the flip he wants.
Yep.
But I certainly hope that he, I hope that he wants to finish it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Because, I think that the first 2 or 3 books of Game of Thrones, or I guess, Song of Ice and Fire. Sorry?
They weren't that big in the early days. The first couple books, they had a small cult following.
Yeah, but he was able to actually put out the books pretty close together. I think after 2 years, 3 years. Yeah, a couple of years. But then you could tell that he started to kind of lag behind, and it's are you getting tired of the story? Is that what's going on?
And then the show happened, which understandably probably put a delay on things because he's trying to steward that in his own way. But just, and then as the series grows, and he probably has certain demands of speaking engagements, publicity things, convention appearances. and all of that certainly eats into his time, eats into his mentality, and that, I'm sure he saw a not insignificant amount of terrible comments online regarding the series, especially with season 8, and that even if he did not approve of, want, or think that the changes were for the best or even necessary, that, at that point in time, we will probably never know the exact degree to which he wanted or did not want certain changes in the show. But he undoubtedly probably saw, and goodness knows that he got an unfair amount of flack from the internet mob, because that's just, if you're a creative in this day and age, it does not matter how perfect you are. It does not matter what you do, no matter what you write. There will be people who will write terrible, terrible things online, and that inevitably is going to have an impact on your mental state. That most folks are nowadays getting better at tuning that out, but especially given the precise years in which Game of Thrones aired, that I sort of point to as basically some of the worst years where people had not trained themselves well enough to know not to read the comments. And that they probably thought, oh, this is good feedback, let's read this, and that I wonder to what degree online discourse may have created mental distaste for him, just, that to what level does he now just associate Game of Thrones with stress, with online vitriol?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that completely turned him off from wanting to even continue. Like, it's probably like, it's so evident that it has been a slog for the past several years, because if someone was as passionate as they were when they first started a project, he would have finished it by now. He would have finished it. But he's dragging his feet because he's, first of all, probably tired of the story, wants to move on to new things, probably.
And he hasn't. He's gotten these opportunities. That he was a consultant for Elden Ring, if memory serves.
There you go.
I think he was. There was some big game. I think that he was a consultant for, but that he's done other things, and that he's gotten those turned around. He has never been necessarily the. Thank you, Torgo, in chat for confirming. Yes, it was Elden Ring, and that he was not necessarily the primary writer, but obviously being a consultant isn't going to be a non-zero time commitment. And they were able to get that game out, and there's so many other things, and he's certainly not going to be wanting for other opportunities. That if he doesn't want to write it, if that's not where his heart and head is, he doesn't need to. He really has no obligation, and that want as we might, and that plenty of fans might, that I'm not going to begrudge him if, like we said, he doesn't. I think he wants to eventually. I don't think he wants to never finish it. But he's certainly under no rush.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, because there's been such a long wait between, the last book and then Winds of Winter, I read through all the books.
What is one more year at this point?
Yeah, what is one more year? And also, I feel that I'm not even excited for the book to come out anymore. I feel like that hype has just died. And I think it'll only be rekindled if he gives a concrete release date. It's finished.
Once you announce it and start a proper, I hate to say a marketing cycle, but a marketing cycle, frankly, for it. You sort of saw that with anime and Attack on Titan, that between seasons 2 and 3, it had this massive, it was 1 and 2, I think. It was 1 or 2 and 2 and 3, but it, in its early seasons, had a good 3, 4, 5 year hiatus, and this was on the tail of it being the biggest thing in anime. That season 1 of Attack on Titan was enormous. That you saw the opening to that everywhere. That it got mainstream awareness for anime for a little bit in a way that we do not see every year. And that with that hiatus, a certain amount of hype dropped off, and that people just sort of stopped paying attention, not because they were sick of the material, that people were happier then, frankly, than they ever were again. But that just people sort of naturally dropped off, and that either they didn't know that it had continued because they were no longer paying attention, or they just sort of mentally wrote off of like, I'm watching all this other stuff now. I don't really know if I need to anymore. The hype isn't necessarily there for me anymore. And as it then continued, it reestablished its hype up until its end part, but then it had its own issues of final part, final season, chapter 2, part the last.
Oh my god. Yeah, I was actually making a joke about that because I stopped watching Attack on Titan after the first season. I actually genuinely fell off, and then because it was such a long like gap, I was like, I'm not into it. And when what was it? When people started saying that there were like it wasn't just like, you know, because there's like what 6-7 seasons technically if you're just gonna number them as they are.
Yeah,
but they started naming it like season 3, part 1, chapter 2. It's
oh my God, because it was season 1, season 2, and then it was season 3, part 1, season 3, part 2. Then it was the final season. Then the final season part 2, that they didn't have part 1 as part of the final season's name at first. It was later, and then it was final season part 3, and then it was the final season, the final chapters, part 1. I'm not making this up, Alphena.
It's ridiculous. It's so silly.
It just, I can understand, all right, yeah, you sort of want to say it's the final season because that creates hype, but at the same time, they had to realize, come on, like, I can respect if you want it to be final season part 1 and final season part 2. That is acceptable. We've had that happen before, and that's okay.
Yes.
But come on, they had to know what they were working with here. That they
had to.
That it was just so egregious, and obviously it didn't in the end really impact whether or not someone was going to watch it, but it certainly became a meme unto itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's gotten so silly, and I think that like a lot of people are realizing things about the characters as well, like how I don't know much about Attack on Titan.
I will say, sorry, you finish, then I'll go.
Yeah. I think people like from what I've heard, Attack on Titan became a thing where the people that you've been following all this time, they're really not good people, actually. And at the end of it, like, there's the whole thing with Eren, and I'm not gonna go into spoilers. I'm not spoiling anything. But there's a whole thing with Eren, and there's a lot of people that just find that really fucking funny. They think it's like, oh, you know what? Deserved.
Well, so what I will say is, I've seen all of Attack on Titan, and I think it is a series worth finishing. I think it is actually phenomenal. Is it perfect? No, very few things are. But I will compare it, frankly, a lot to Game of Thrones in its broader sense, not in the sense of how the ending was taken or anything, because the ending was faithful to the source material, and that's part of why they waited. But that Game of Thrones is a story where very few people are good people. It is a story of bad people making decisions that are terrible and awful and harmful. And that's how some media is. And I think that there should be media that is just a bunch of horrible people making horrible decisions, because in some unfortunate cases, that's life. That is how some things are. And I think that if, as a viewer, you are not able to accept that characters that you like become worse as people, I think that's kind of closed-minded as a viewer. And I can understand frustration of it, of just like, man, I hate to see that this character that I loved has gone off the deep end. But at the same time, I would hope that people can sort of respect the writing. That I will say, as a viewer, I think that all of the character progression was logical. That I don't think that they sort of swerved or changed any motivations, that the way that Eren progressed and the way that his mentality operated from episode 1, given the events and information that he was presented with, I think is completely consistent with how he reacts and what he does throughout the series. That people change and grow, but also people have certain consistencies in that the way that they operate in certain situations can be good or bad based on their mentality. And I think that the series was very faithful to its characters in that way.
Yeah, no, I can definitely give it that. You mentioned a comparison to like Game of Thrones in which like none of the characters are, you know, genuinely good. There's like all the characters have something bad about them, but I think the difference is that in Game of Thrones from the get-go, you know nobody's good. You know that there are flaws in each and every one of these characters. And in Attack on Titan, they kind of make you root for these characters. They make
That's
you believe
very
like
fair.
they're the good guys. They're the good guys. These are the guys that you want to root for. And then when you get to the end, like
You're
you
not rooting
feel
for
like,
anybody.
yeah, you're like, I feel betrayed because this is not what I signed up for, you know?
I can
And
respect that.
it's funny because there are like the point of view on Aaron from what I've seen like on social media is that there are people that absolutely hate him. They don't like him anymore. They just really dislike him. But then you got people who are still supporting him and they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, Aaron is absolutely justified. I love him, la la la."
I think that's a testament to the writing. I think that it means you've written a very complex
Yeah.
character when you can have
Yeah.
people who both vehemently agree and disagree with his actions. That, and I think in some ways that's the point.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Yeah.
But I can also agree with your comment of, in Game of Thrones, you're sort of engineered to root for the Starks, at least in the beginning, and that they are as close to good guys as you are going to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that what happens in Game of Thrones isn't so much that you see the Starks go through things that make them make decisions that people don't like. They just die.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's not it is literally the Batman scenario of you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. The Starks
Yep.
died, Aaron didn't.
Yep. Yeah,
I hadn't even thought of it from that perspective, but I really like that one now.
That is-
Just
yeah,
they literally
it's wild.
they literally didn't live long enough to become the villain, and Aaron did.
That is so true. Gee whiz. Oh my goodness. Like I don't think a lot of people say that like Attack on Titan is worth watching. I don't think I'm ever going to sit down and watch all of the seasons. And I feel like I already know what has gone on because people have talked about it so much on social
I've been
media.
very reserved about it here. People on social media will spoil anything.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. JJK right now, people are insane. They're freaking insane. Especially the manga readers, because they're out here leaking shit that hasn't even freaking.
If you are an anime fan, you need to set up, and this is something that I say in general for social media curation, just not only for spoilers, but utilize, for all the things that it does not do terribly well. Twitter has an incredible and robust word blocking function. That just, if you go into the settings, that you can block specific words. I have blocked basically all political terms, any specific names or things that I don't want to see. I tell people, don't block accounts unless it's like a very specific need. It is so much more efficient to just block words. That you don't need to, if there's somebody whose content you like, but then they're also posting about certain drama things, if you just block the drama stuff, you don't need to unfollow them. And then you can still, see the art that you like, and whatever it may be. But same thing with spoilers, that I would definitely recommend that if you are on social media, and you can even set timers on it, that you can set, all right, this block will stop in 1 day, 7 days, a month, or never. And that it just, put in Jujutsu Kaisen, put JJK, put spelled out, and any variation on the term. Because you do have to iterate, because it will only block exactly what you tell it to, as things will. But that I have lots of filters like that in place, because I know that nobody holds back with spoilers nowadays.
Oh yeah. And you also have to trust that those posters are actually going to use those keywords, because there are some that just just slap the page out there and don't say anything with it.
Or just that they have, they feel like they're not spoiling if I say it in this very roundabout way that is also very easy to infer what just happened.
Yeah.
Of just that, that they'll put character name ... and that's all they'll say, and you're just like, well, I guess this character's probably dead, or something awful happened to this character, something really bad's happened to them.
It's wild, and it makes me wonder, like, what is the goal here? Are you trying to, like, show everyone that, like, oh, I've seen it before you, I've seen it before everybody, I know what's gonna happen? What is the point here? What is the goal?
I think what it is that I hate to go back in my day, but back in the day, you would have specific forums and you would have spoiler boards where people would specifically go to react and talk about the thing they just saw. And forums, by and large, are not a thing anymore. That the most you will get is maybe like a specific Reddit, but even then, certain things will have, you know, spoiler, like sort of bans or embargoes for a certain amount of time, and that's assuming that you want to go on Reddit at all. But that just, there aren't as many places to go online to discuss those topics as there used to be, or certainly they aren't as ubiquitous as they used to be. So you are left with Twitter and other forms of social media. So that's where people go. I don't think it is necessarily like I read it first, but they want to talk about it. They want to react with others, and like, that's great. That's fandom. That's exciting. That means that you're really resonating with whatever media it is, and I totally respect that. And that I think that just kids these days, since they didn't necessarily have those spoiler boards, that there is a sort of like a quote-unquote cultural disconnect of sort of spoiler culture, I kind of feel. And God, I hate sounding like this. It makes me sound old and grumpy, and I don't want it to be that way. I'm sort of explaining, I can understand how we got here.
It's
begrudgingly logical how we got here.
Yeah, like there was some form of internet etiquette back in the day that there is no longer today.
And it's not that kids these days are incapable of it, certainly not. It's just that there were certain, the way that, literally the way that websites were structured back in the day, and the way that people posted, because it was, you know, a specific board with a category and more specific rules and curation than you have on a broad social media platform like Twitter or Instagram or whatever, that just the actual environment lent itself to having that type of curation and mindfulness that simply doesn't exist now. That if kids nowadays had, you know, the internet as it was back then, they would have been just as capable as we were of, you know, social media etiquette. It is all about the environment, nurture, not nature. That I'm not going to begrudge kids these days for things that are out of their control. It's just, it's different.
Yep, they've grown up in times that are vastly different from what we grew up in, and I think it's okay to be annoyed, but you can't blame the...
Yeah, exactly, and that's where I am. That I say, I wish people were a bit more mindful, but like I said, I understand how we got here, and it's not their fault. It's just, you know, the world, the internet world we live in.
Yep.
But
things change.
Yeah. But we do have VTubing now. We didn't have that.
We have VTubing now.
It's like, there is good in the world. There is good in the internet for all the things that have changed, and that it's like, okay, you know, I kind of wish that hadn't changed. That, you know, look at all this technology. That 5-10 years ago, this is unthinkable. This is just for everything of, all right, AI frustration. That there's so much other technology that's cool and useful and good, and that is fostering and allowing creativity in ways that we couldn't have even imagined before.
Yeah, I love it. I am so happy for where VTubing has gone, because it was extremely like niche. It still is, but not so much as it was in the past. And I love seeing it evolve. I love seeing all the cool things that people are able to do with it. I only started learning about VTubing in 2020, like at the very beginning of COVID, when Hololive released their very first EN group, and it was like, holy shit, what is this? This is so freaking cool. And like, that was it. that was it. I was like, I need to do this. I need to do this as well.
Yeah.
And
I point to the debut of Holo EN and Holo Myth as one of the major inflection points of VTubing in the West, and at this point probably globally, because I think that it finally being able to truly break out of Japan was so important for it becoming the global thing it is today, that it had proliferated, that there were English-speaking VTubers before Holo Myth, absolutely, but the sheer difference of before and after, and that I'm actually in the exact same boat as you, that I'd heard of VTubing. I'd heard of Kizuna Ai back in 2016-17, just sort of conceptually. It was like, oh, you know, someone has to go into a studio and use this full body motion capture thing. I've heard of motion capture. It wasn't the first time motion capture had existed. I can understand why someone would do that for YouTube content creation. That's neat. They speak Japanese, so I'm not exactly able to follow their content.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a friend who showed me a couple of HoloLive clips in summer of 2020, because certainly I was watching a lot more Twitch content and online content, as most were, because, well, people were inside and had a lot of time on their hands. But okay, that's a nice clip. Korone and all these other folks from HoloLive and whatnot seem very funny, and I smile whenever my friend tosses me a clip. But, well, I don't speak Japanese. I'm not going to tune into one of their streams live. That's not me saying I don't like their content. It's a literal language barrier.
Yeah, and I Go on.
But then I see the announcement of, they're going to release an English wave. Cool. Well, I happen to be awake at this hour when the first one is debuting, and I'm working from home, so I can tune in and have this on the side. And this is a story I've told many times on the stream, but it's as important as ever, that prior to 2020 and now that things are, not under lockdown as they were at that point in time, I went to a lot of conventions. I go to a lot of conventions that I love. Conventions. Surprise, surprise, the talk show host is an extrovert. And you know what wasn't happening in 2020? Events and conventions.
Yep.
I tune in to Mori Calliope's debut, the first of the N to debut. And something about seeing the chat zoom, I don't know what it was, but something in that moment was the closest thing that I had felt to a convention environment in some 8 or 9 months. And compile that with Callie and the others being just genuinely entertaining people. Yeah. And it was all over. It was all over. And then it was 3 months or so later when I start poking around outside of HoloLive and say, well, doesn't look like conventions are going to be happening anytime soon still. I have too much time on my hands. I'm bored, and I don't want to be a VTuber. I don't think I would have an inspiration for a design for a VTuber. I say it now that I am a VTuber. It took me 3 years to get here, though. But that was the mentality at the time. It was like, okay, what could I do? I want to do something. I don't have the time or the drive to be a full-time content creator. I could do something maybe once a week. I don't know. And I had seen another stream of someone doing a talk show for unrelated things, and so it wound up being sort of top of mind for me. And that's why VTuber Talk happened. That the debut of, if I don't happen to tune into Callie's debut on that fall morning, there's a possibility that VTuber Talk happens, but the timeline is certainly disrupted.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. It's pretty much, I think, the same for me. And the only reason that I even knew that there was going to be like a Holo EN subsection is because my friend who has been watching like HoloLive and like I don't remember the group that she was with, but the group that Pikami was in.
VOMS.
Yes, VOMS. They loved those two groups. They watched a lot of like VTubers from there, but like it's all Japanese, right? Yeah. And they don't speak a lick of it, but they still watch it. And I'm just like, that is impressive. And also, how do you?
I can't do that. I was totally on board with watching clips at any time I saw a good clip, and certainly the YouTube algorithm helped, I think, set the stage, because the clipping community was and has been and still is on point, and that some of those clips hit the YouTube algorithm, and that I know a lot of folks who's like, okay, I just clicked on this one single VTuber clip, and now my entire feed is VTuber clips.
Yep. And yeah, much like you, when my friend was like, hey, this thing that I've been watching that's only been in a language you don't understand is now coming out with a English branch. Check it out. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. I'll give it a try, you know? But then it just sucks you in. It's just like you look at it and it's like, oh my God, I know what I need to do now.
And also just, I will point to Cover Corporation's HR department is incredible. Their talent recruitment department, whoever is in charge there, the people that they hire, they don't miss.
No,
they
do not.
You look at the 5 in Myth and say, well, just one, how different they are, personality-wise, and the depth of content, the fact that they brought in someone whose specialty wasn't just singing, wasn't idol singing, because they did have some of that, they had plenty of that, but that they brought in someone who specialized in rap. They brought in someone who was of the mindset to do weird tinkering things. I fully believe that if Amelia Watson ever wants to stop actively VTubing, she can and could be either a manager or like technology or production specialist for Cover Corp behind the scenes if she so chose, because goodness knows that's basically what she does part-time as it is.
Yeah. And like you've got, I don't know if it was a thing. Again, I don't know much about the Japanese branch besides like the big names. But like Ina is like does a lot of art, and she's so soft spoken and like quiet, and that's her whole personality. And she's an artist and she draws.
And I don't know if
love
they'd had many, or that it's not totally uncommon that someone who streams will do some level of art, but it was very clear from the get-go that Ina was an artist first and foremost, always has been, and that they let someone with that type of specialty that is not necessarily inherent to streaming and not always necessarily conducive to streaming, because if you're working on art, you're very focused and not it takes training, it takes practice to be able to talk and multitask while doing art, especially to the quality of Ina's. But that they were on my side, it's like, we want to bring in someone like that, and it's so clear that even they did not expect their level of success. Nobody did. That they obviously were, confident enough, they're not going to do this big business venture unless they think it's going to be successful and profitable to some degree. But it is clear that for the talent and for the management of Cover Corporation, that it ran away from them so much faster than they ever imagined. They didn't know what to do for that first year. And some of the talent has even said on record, like, it was scary that we were kind of left to fend for ourselves, not because they were like negligent as management, but because everything was going so fast and so big, there was no structural preparation for it, because there couldn't have been. It would have been irresponsible to predict what happened. It would be laughable for them to write in their business plan, okay, we think they're gonna get, one of these talents is going to get 1 million followers in a matter of months, and that we're going to get this level of traffic. It'd be laughable and irresponsible. And
it's not something you can expect. It's not something you can predict at all, especially if it's their first time releasing an EN branch.
There's no precedent for this. There's no data for this. They have, each time we introduce this, VTubing obviously doesn't have the stats in the West, so we should expect it to be less. By all rights, we should not need to put quite as much into it. We'll make sure that they have some managers and such, and we'll hopefully we'll be able to scale this over a couple of years and make sure that it is a viable long-term project for us.
Yes.
Oops, we broke everything because it got too big.
It got insanely big. It got huge. They had no idea that it would get this huge. They didn't see it coming. And I appreciate that they're not releasing wave after wave after wave of EN groups. I like that they took a little bit before releasing. I think there was so there was Hollow Myth, and then there was
Council, which took about a
Council.
year and
Yep.
3-ish months, but that's been Cover Corporation's pacing in general. That, you know, obviously there's a lot of discourse going on right now about agency management, so I'm happy that we're talking about some of the good ones, and I'm sure not
Yeah.
everything is perfect at Cover Corporation.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
there are things unseen, unheard that have been rough, and
Oh,
frankly,
yeah.
that happens at most companies. It is, again, exceedingly rare and frankly not practical to think that a company is going to be perfect and that there is no drama and stuff. But at the same time, even prior to EN, that Whole Life had only released like a gen a year, maybe some 9 months apart, but they were very slow and steady with their rollouts.
Yeah.
And that compared to some other companies, that their talent rosters were very much quality over quantity.
Yes.
And they've kept to that, and that it certainly must have taken a lot of restraint, especially in those early days, given the explosive growth of Myth, for them to not want to immediately pounce and roll out 2 more gens in the next 12 months, but to wait.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I think that was honestly the right like move, because it builds up a lot of like anticipation for the next wave. The like people get excited, like, oh, who's going to be the the next idol? What is going to be the theme? Who are they going to be? What's their character?
It lets them get the internals all set, because obviously, like we said, it was very clear that nobody was prepared. They couldn't have been, but that they took the time to get their stuff in order, and that I feel like that's part of why the talent is comfortable and able to say, yeah, it was flippin' rough during the early days, because they and management understand that that's not a slight against them, and that they aren't speaking out or trying to defame the company. They're saying, yeah, it was kind of crazy in those early days. But also, the proof's in the pudding. Look at the number of graduations that Cover Corporation has had over the years across all branches. It is tiny.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's that's what it frankly impresses me most.
Yeah. Like they've got to be doing something right for folks to want to stick around.
Yeah. Because there's multiple cases where I sort of expected that people would graduate. Gargura, just... It's insane, because she, by all rights, everything looked like it was setting up for the classic circumstance of burns so brightly, so fast, and burns out.
Yeah.
And she did. And I expected, I think many others did too, that she was going to burn out, and to the point of, that she needs to graduate, maybe do some stuff on the side, but that... with everything and how quickly it went for her, that similar to Usagi, someone just a normal girl having the weight of the world put on their shoulders, the amount of stress that it must have been for her, amongst many other things. By all rights, by all precedent, she should have given up. She should have said, I'm going to graduate in good standing, but holy cow, I can't do that. Who could do that? But not only she, but management allowed her to, take a year off, but she's still getting they've made her into this ambassador. They've set her up with all these corporate collabs, so many merchandising things, and that she's able to sort of cruise in the background, and that she does not stream any more than she wants to or needs to, and they have allowed her to exist as a pseudo, almost not streaming talent. That's another thing that management needs a level of maturity to do and facilitate.
Yes. Especially since like Gura does, I like, from what I've seen from Gura is that she does a lot of not covers. She does a lot of like singing, a lot of music, a lot of collaborations with a lot of other like VTubers. And I think that's fine. I think that's okay to do, because if you as a person feel a lot more comfortable not speaking directly to an audience all the time, and you want to sing, you want to like participate in these like collaborations and stuff, and you still make people happy with the content that you put out, like, go for it. People are going to be super happy with the music that you put out, especially if it's something that you enjoy doing. Much more so than, streaming live in front of an audience of like tens of thousands of people,
Yeah, that she found what was healthiest and most fun for her, and that management said okay, and that even though it was and is frankly anomalous for how those companies operate, that they were able to make it work. And obviously, it's certainly in their best interest. That I'm not necessarily saying this is totally altruistic and whatnot, but that they were smart enough to realize we have this incredibly popular personality here who, if not given different considerations, will just leave. And that, as a company, but let's go full-on skeptic, greedy company, bad company, evil company. It's still in their best interest to do what they've done, but there are so many companies that are not patient and smart enough to do what they've done, because there's plenty of, profit greed, that they can only think in the short term, that thinking in the long term like this, that's the smart move, and they've been smart enough to think in the long term with Gargura.
Yes. Yep. And I whatever's healthiest for her, honestly, because if your talent is not doing well, then it's gonna reflect in a lot of things. Yeah. Belcore.
But that's the thing, that I can understand business decisions that VTubing isn't cheap, and that running a company, that you have all these other employees that need to be paid, that shareholders aside, there's people that work at these companies, but that they are smart enough to say, all right, the value for, be it employees, company, shareholders, what have you, doesn't need to be in the next 6 months. It can be in 6 years, or over the course of 6 years or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Just the mere fact that they were able to say, okay, our options are put, sort of pump the brakes on this, figure out how to be able to accommodate this talent, because if we don't, she's just gone.
Yep.
And
no, exactly. Like, sometimes you just have to, I feel like what you said about, sometimes it's like you have to slowly pace yourself to work towards that kind of thing, that kind of how would you call it, popularity, like that, what Hololive has been able to do. The fact that they exploded as quickly as they did, it's like
and then didn't collapse under their own weight.
It didn't collapse. Yeah, it's a 1 in a million chance of that happening, but also they have been working towards something like this. They had all of the Japanese branch in order to, know how to function, know how to make things work. They already had experience with what they were doing, and they were like, all right, let's just flip it to the EN side, and it exploded. It blew up. It was chance. It was chance, but also they worked towards that.
Yeah, just what they knew, what they were looking for. They were smart enough to look for different types of talents, that yes, they still had sort of the underpinning of the broader idol aesthetics and such, but that they let themselves think broader. And this is why I said earlier that I want to see a documentary, and I think it was Melkor in chat that said, I want a Yago biopic, because Cover Corporation wasn't supposed to be an idol agency. It wasn't supposed to be a streaming agency. It was a software company. It was a gaming company. Yago was developing a VR ping pong game.
Wild.
And then they made what was supposed to be sort of a virtual avatar thing, and they hired a high school girl to, sort of pilot, who was supposed to be their mascot initially, and, well, it went from there. The rest is history of just this little thing that was initially supposed to be for software. This person who had done, I think he had worked with Sanrio, if memory serves, and then they eventually pivot, and as the joke goes, that Yago said, well, we're going to be sort of similar to AKB47, sort of similar, just for the broad concepts of it, and that they started kind of making it an agency idol-ish in nature, but then that it just, for him and Sora and Achan, like, I want the three of them. Give me a 3-part documentary with each of their experiences of how things have gone, because it's so mind-boggling.
Oh, yeah. It would be really interesting to see what the whole process was, the whole thought process, like how it started, why they decided to go in the direction that they did. I am extremely curious, and I think it'd be really cool to see like a biopic, like a documentary about that. I think that'd be awesome. There's a lot of, like you said, you brought up Iron Mouse. Like, Iron Mouse.
We could have a whole one about just her.
Yeah. Like, and I think she's like a huge inspiration for a lot of people. And I feel like people don't seem to understand, like, new VTubers that want to like get into VTubing. They look at Iron Mouse and they think, oh, you know, like the easy, I can do that. Like, I can do what she does and like become big.
People
and
don't
it's like,
remember how many years Iron Mouse was streaming before VShojo existed.
Exactly. Yes, sure. She started like getting a broader audience because VShojo was it became such a huge name because you had people like Yanners in it. You had like Hime Hajime. You had Zentreya.
Project Melody that you had.
Melody.
It was a big deal, and the thing is, VShojo was kind of late to the game.
It was.
They were, I think, the day after Christmas 2021, a full year after Hollow EN. It feels like they've been around for forever. They have not.
Nope. And the thing is, Iron Mouse was already VTubing for years before that.
4 years to 50 people.
50. Yeah. Like, for that long. Just 50 people for years and years. And that's the thing with content creation and VTubing. It's a slow growth. It's not something that it's not something you can expect to just like become huge overnight. It doesn't work that way. It does not.
Yeah.
It is something you work at and expect to take years and years and years of just having a small audience. If I can give a very good example, a recent example, Fufu, she had been doing streaming for 7 years. And to like an audience of 20 people. 7 years of just streaming to 20 people. And it's only like in 2023, at the end of 2023, during Fillion's VTuber Awards, that the spotlight was put on her as like, a hidden gem. Yeah, there you go. There's a shout out given to Fufu.
Yeah.
Like, so she was considered a hidden gem, and now she's streaming to like 500 people easily, like every single time she streams. And that's because there were certain pieces of the puzzle that just fell just right for her to be pushed into the spotlight.
That's how it goes in content creation, this is the long game, folks.
Yep.
That 90% of the people, if they somehow go viral on some of their first couple things, they usually either burn out, or just, if they are so new in that they went viral on their first go-round, they don't know enough on how to maintain it, that they will peter out. I've seen people, that sometimes, Iron Mouse or very, very big folks will raid into small folks, and that's amazing. That's lovely. But you don't see every person that they raid into just suddenly pop off and sustain it overnight, even if they get a good influx, and that can sort of help boost them undeniably. But it's not like every single person is suddenly discovered, oh wow, this is a hidden gem, and they're instantly recognized for everything they have, and that they maintain, not everybody that they raid suddenly has 1,000 people every stream. That's not how it goes. And even for HoloLive, that, yes, obviously they blew up, that wasn't an accident. Yes, we have the rule of Fight Club, and we don't necessarily say aloud exactly who these people were before they had their agency personas. They aren't new. They aren't doing this for the first time. Half of Calliope Mori's discography is her talking about the formative years. The entire thing of Off With Their Heads is that this is a process. This is going to be the long game, that you are going to need to work on this You're going to need to grow and learn and figure out how to make things work before you're going to get successful. And even then, you might not be. And it's so much. And these people put in so many hours behind the scenes that we will never see. And I'm sure you do as well, Alphena, that anyone who's doing content creation, just the number of hours that you put in on air, live, is probably half or less than what you do off. And if you're able to get it to the point where you've sort of streamlined your content to where you don't need to put in the hours offline, it means it's just because you put in the hours already.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, like, it's a process. It's through experience that you learn what works and what doesn't, and what worked, especially not just for the audience and what brings in more people, but what works for you. Because some things that could, bring in a lot more people might just exhaust you in the long run. And you cannot keep that up. You will not be able to keep that up. It's something that you need to balance.
Unless it's a meta that you're going to enjoy.
Exactly. And I think that's the most important thing. And I've heard people say like kind of be snarky about the enjoy what you do like kind of thing, or like do something you're going to enjoy. But like no, that's important. Like, if you want to be able to stick to this for the long run and keep at it for years and years and years, because it's gonna take years before you like blow up unless you get lucky. Like, you can't just be doing all the gimmicks that everyone has already done, because that's gonna propel you into the spotlight. That's not how that works. It's not something sustainable at all.
If you see a gimmick that you like, if there's, the game of the week and you're like, oh, whoa, wait, hold on, this genre's my jam, I love these games. Heck yeah. That by all means, capitalize on things that are already to your strengths, and certainly be comfortable trying new things. That's good, that's part of growth. But at the same time, you shouldn't be bending over backwards saying, okay, I need to play Phasmophobia, I need to play Fortnite or Lethal Company or what have you, that, like I said, try them, see if you like them maybe. But don't do something that is going to risk you burning out and just not enjoying what you're doing. I'm very aware that Vtuber Talk accidentally has been scientifically engineered to be the worst possible setup for growth as a content creator. It is actually... I didn't even think about it until a couple months in, when I sort of stepped back and said, oh, wow, I'm doing what everyone says to not do. Don't just stream collabs. Don't. If you want to grow as a content creator, you should not just be doing collabs. It's a terrible idea. You shouldn't be streaming just once a week if you want to grow. That's not a good idea either. If you're streaming once a week, you should have it regularly scheduled, some type of consistency, something that people can expect. I schedule around my guests. I have no consistency. You should probably cultivate some social media. Running a Discord server for community growth is very good. I have no interest in running a Discord server. I was a community manager for a time, and I'm never running a Discord server again, because I know if I do, I will burn out again. As I did from community management. I'm not doing that because I know that's smart for my my own mentality and enjoyment. But at the same time, I don't give a damn about the goal of Vtuber Talk wasn't growth. So while it's kind of hilarious that everything I've done, sometimes you see cases of, oh wow, I accidentally created this perfect system and it just everything I wanted aligned with what would be good for growth, and wow, that's a lovely scenario. And I looked and said, wow, this is by all rights on paper awful. If I wanted to grow this channel, I need to do many, many things different, and I'm very aware of that, and I don't, and I'm fine with that. I enjoy this. I'm here after 3 years, very happy, and no regrets.
There you go. Because another thing that a lot of people don't see, because a lot of that stuff happens behind the scenes, right? Is when you decide to dedicate your time to becoming a content creator, you can say goodbye to a lot of social life stuff. If you are trying to dedicate yourself to creating content, creating stuff on YouTube and streaming and doing the clipping and all this, reaching out for sponsorships and like stuff like that, you are not going to get the chance to go outside and live a normal life like you normally would. It doesn't work that way. If you become a content creator, that's it. If you're in there for the long haul, that's it. Forget your social life. Your social life is going to be on the internet. Yeah.
How I ended up where I did, because I didn't want it to be all this, that I have other projects. Certainly, Vtuber Talk has scaled even in this form to be a very big time sink. That it just, even the amount of hours I spend, hopping around streams looking for guests, because I'm very mindful of the folks that I want to have on, because this isn't me passing judgment of quality and saying, oh, you are not worthy to be on my show. No, quite the opposite. I recognize that there are many people out there whose style and enjoyment make them a bad fit for a talk show. That there's a lot of people who I do not think would enjoy or thrive in a talk show environment. And one of the things that the thing that I'm most mindful of when I'm hopping around is I don't care about what the viewer count is. I don't care, as long as, certainly a model might make me click on your stream a bit faster, but that's not the point either. I've had PNG YouTubers. I've had folks with very, very simple designs on. I tune into stream, and the big thing for me is, do I think I could hold a conversation with this person for 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours? Yep. That's all I care about. But at the same time, for folks that are, very focused on their game, they're maybe a more gameplay-centric streamer, and that they don't talk much, maybe they're not going to be someone who would enjoy being on a talk show. That's fine. There's plenty of content creators that don't talk much or at all, because they're just doing really good gameplay, and that's entertaining too.
Yes, exactly.
That's a big thing.
Yep.
But at the same time, I look at that and say, well, maybe you would not enjoy being on a talk show, and I don't want to put a content creator in a place where they can't thrive. That's silly.
No, exactly. There's just so many different types of content creators out there. And like you said, not everyone is going to be good with talking, with keeping up a conversation, even collaborating. There's some folks that just have a hard time with collaborating, and they just do a lot better solo. For example, on my end, I can do collabs if I'm not the one streaming. Because when you're collaborating on something and you're also managing a stream at the same time, it is so hard, because you have to pay attention to, 1, the game that you're playing, 2, the people that you're collaborating with, and 3, the chat and your audience.
There's a reason I went with a simple talk show and not like, oh, let's play a game. Let's have all these activities during the talk. No, there are some folks that can do it, and I respect the hell out of them.
Oh,
I very deliberately put myself on easy mode.
Yeah, no, because it's hard. It's so hard. It's stressful. So, like for example, for myself, as said, I've.
Well,
Oh, sorry. Whoops. I took off my thumb from the push to talk button.
Oh.
I've done collaborations where I streamed my point of view. And it's hard, because I love interacting with my chat. I love talking with my chat. I love, making them feel like they're seen and like they're a part of the show that I'm putting on, basically. And when I'm collaborating, I can't do that, because I'm talking with the people that I'm collaborating with. And most of the time, the people that you're collaborating with, they don't see the chat. They don't see what you're talking to. So, like, when you want to talk to your chat, you either, like, turn off your own mic so that you're not distracting the other folks that you're playing with, or you can just talk and have them hear everything you're saying with no context whatsoever, and that can be extremely awkward.
Not good either.
Exactly. So, collabs are fun. I love collaborating with friends, especially. I have a hard time accepting collaborations with people that I have no clue about,
and
that I have.
I'm beyond flattered that you accepted mine, because again, scientifically designed this to be terrible, that Yes, you're absolutely right that normally people are going to want to collaborate with people that they have more familiarity with, collaborations over time, regular collaborations. I have people on once and then invite everyone to return once a year for the charity marathon, but I'm not out here doing a bunch of other collabs that if people invite me on that I will usually accept, but that I also acknowledge that one collaboration does not a friendship make. And
exactly.
That I find myself in this sort of awkward situation because one, I know that if you run a talk show, if you run the type of channel that I run, that it is so easy to intentionally or unintentionally end up being super scummy. And that there are horror stories of people who do channels like this that are just, people talk about clout chasers, and that, I don't think that most people attempt to be clout chasers. There are a few that are. And that there are a few who try to use people, and that's something that that is truly my greatest fear, Alphena. I every day am acutely aware of the way that I can be perceived, and that I am so grateful to you and the many, many people. This is episode 139. The fact that 139 people have said, yes, I will go on your little talk show, and that I am very little, very, very little. That my following is like 95+% of the time smaller than the guests, and that's not because I only invite people bigger than me on, but because I am that small that there's just, statistically speaking, not many that are smaller than me. That it's not a lot, and that the fact that you take time out of your schedule to be here with me, someone who we are not super familiar with each other, means a lot.
But see, that's the thing. Like, you've mentioned that you're like acutely aware of how it might be perceived, but I think the fact that so many VTubers have decided to agree to appear on your show is kind of just like a testament to how, like, not dangerous you're just so not dangerous. Like, you don't give off like the vibes of someone who is clout chasing. You don't give that vibe off. You're someone who's genuinely there to talk and have a discussion with these VTubers because it's something that you enjoy doing. You're not there to like, propel your career forward. That's not what you're doing at all. And I think people recognize that. I feel like people can see when someone is being genuine and when someone is not. And the fact that you are at episode 139, I feel at this point you can safely say
it's easier than it used to be. I will say that much. And that I'm, don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of what I've done, and that I feel that my awareness has been the reason that I've been able to do what I've done without falling into any of the traps or being misperceived as someone who is clout chasing, because I have been mindful of that, and that I do recognize that even being mindful doesn't 100% of the time mean that it's going to work. I'm happy that it has, and that I've continued to hopefully do all right, and that I marvel at, like I said, I knew it was a long game to begin with, but even so, I look and say, wow, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah.
It's been very nice and very fun, and that like you said, you don't normally do these, and that certainly I reach out to people, and there's plenty of folks that respectfully decline. There's plenty of folks that just don't respond, and that's fine too. That I've never had a rude declination. That I have many more non-responses than rude, sort of polite
someone
active
just
declinations.
No,
but I understand that whether it's that my message got lost in a filter because Twitter and Discord will hide things away in certain folders if you aren't already a friend or following that person, or if just, all right, they don't want to seem confrontational and they're not comfortable and not interested, but they don't want the awkwardness of responding and declining. I can respect that. I'm not going to question it for whatever reason. That's fine.
Yeah.
And that I'm just so grateful for the ones that do say yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like it's it's fun to be able to just talk about like just random subjects, like things that like yes, kind of pertain to the whole content creation sphere, but also things that are like uh, slightly adjacent to it, things that are related but also like are a little bit detached from it. It's where I how many topics have we covered tonight?
From our actual list, one.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, and I told you, I was like, all right, I have this pre-interview, and I get a list of good topics and places to start for conversation. But if tangents and unexpected things happen, cool, great, no problem. I almost I don't consciously try to stray away from content creation discussions, but I recognize that there's a lot of places that do discuss that already, and I want to make sure that things are fresh and interesting. But I don't even recall how exactly we wound up where we did, because we started with your hat.
Yeah.
But and we started with hat, and well, I guess the scuff and sort of meant that we were talking again adjacent content creation. And then I tried to sort of swerve us into, all right, let's get into your interests, the things that you like with horror games, and then whoops, we wound up back on there again.
Yeah, but I think that's fine because it's all related and it all segued naturally into these topics.
And that's what I try and do as a host, of just, okay, that I will experiment and nudge and see, all right, how does the conversation go? But if I see something just naturally flowing, I'm not going to fight against that current. I'm okay, I guess we're doing this now. That's half the fun for me. I don't necessarily know how my shows are going to go, but like I said, my big thing, quote unquote, is in terms of like curation. It's not that I'm looking for the biggest people. I'm looking for people that I see on there, so I'm like, okay, I think this person would be good in conversation. And I don't feel like I've ever actually missed on that. and certainly I'm spoiled for choice. There are so, we discussed it, there's so many VTubers out there. I will never be able to talk with all of the VTubers out there. And that, I'm not necessarily, I have the perfect eye. I've gotten like incalculably lucky. I think that if you have just even the slightest discerning eye, that you can get a damn near perfect track record without too much difficulty. You just need to, be that slight bit mindful, and that, well, it's paid off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really funny that you say that you're like, you look for people who would be able to hold a conversation, because I have never seen myself as someone that could hold a conversation. Because I'm usually the person.
I think you proved yourself wrong quite well tonight already, certainly.
Because I'm usually the person who kind of just sits back and listens, right? If it's a one-on-one, yeah, I'll talk. I'll keep talking. I'll be fine with trying to keep things flowing. But as soon as there's myself and then two other people, I'm gonna let those two other people talk, and I'm just gonna take a backseat. Well, that's typically how I work.
When I'm looking for people that I think can hold a conversation, the biggest thing I look for is, can people hold a conversation with their chat? The lack of dead air is a big thing, of just, whether it be talking to chat or just talking to themselves, even commentating on their own stuff. That's big. The ability to talk in one way or another is that in a nutshell is what I'm looking for. And that certainly you do not have a lot of dead air on your streams, that you are able to hold good conversations with chat, with yourself, with folks that you collaborate with. That I was incredibly confident when I reached out to you. It was like, there have been a couple of folks where I'm sort of in the middle of like, okay, they seem a bit more reserved, but I've seen them a couple times that when you get them going, that they can get going. And I pride myself on being someone who can get others to talk. And that, sometimes I think, okay, this one I might need to put in, sort of nudge the guest to make sure they get out of their shell. I was not worried about that at all tonight.
No, no, I think we're good. I think we're set. And it's funny because like, that's something that you work at, because I wasn't always able to just fill dead air. I was not always able to hold a conversation with chat, especially in the early days when, you don't have as many people in chat that are actively talking to you while you're streaming. You you have to kind of keep talking regardless of whether or not there's someone that you're talking to. You have to commentate.
Yeah.
You have to talk about stuff. And that was not something that I used to be good at. I started streaming in 2012. The very first time I streamed was in 2012. And
I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah. But like, it wasn't, I haven't been like, it was very much on and off. It was not a steady thing. Yeah. It was the very first stream I did was it was during the days of Procaster and live stream.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Because that predates Twitch. I don't know if it predates Justin TV or not, but it definitely predates Twitch.
I don't know. Yes, it does. It definitely does. And when I streamed, I was so incredibly shy. I was the shyest person ever, and I was part of like a group of streamers. They had their own like a site, and they would stream, and a lot of them were European, but they were just looking for people that would be able to stream at different times of the day. So the fact that I was over on the American side and I could fill some like hours.
Yeah, that was a benefit that you helped them get that coverage.
Exactly. I was also the first female streamer on their channel, so I was especially like kind of like scared. But I was fine in the end. People liked listening to me, and like watching me, even if I didn't talk too much. And I accidentally started getting a weird little gimmick where whenever a character dies in a game, be it my fault or not, it's my fault regardless. So
and we have that today. Who was it? Y490. I blame Alphena for everything.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I guess
sometimes the inside jokes that's the thing of creating, I hate to say a brand, but just every time that as you cultivate sort of the community and personality, that yes, you get your running jokes and you get the gags, and sometimes that ends up being the thing that it's rarely ones that are intended to be gags, but just all right, it keeps popping up, and then after the fourth, fifth time, it's just a thing. It's
wild because like the communities of like the one that I have now and like the folks that used to watch me back in 2012, there's no overlap, zero overlap, and the joke still came back with this community here, and I mean, I'm fine with it. I'm used to it at this point, but it's like wow, that is a hilarious.
How did this happen? Why did this happen?
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, I have a lot of fun with it. It's great. One thing I couldn't kill you.
Well,
all right, yeah. But yeah, getting back to the whole like filling dead air thing, it's something you need to work at. I cringe so hard looking back at some streams from 2012, and I'm just like, oh my god, how did people ever watch me like this? It's so
doing that getting over it stream, and that I did my best to fill dead air because obviously I didn't have a guest to bounce off of, and I did as best as I could. And in my defense, certainly a game like Getting Over It, where you need to really pay attention, I was trying to finesse and having issues with the mouse feeling slippery, that I tried to keep the commentary going, but I certainly noticed at certain points, okay, I'm concentrating so much, I haven't said anything in 2 minutes, But that's because, that's only my second game stream ever, because I do it once a year as a charity reward thing. It is something I don't have practice in, but for the show, for the interview, the pre-interview is something I've done since episode 1. I'm very proud of it, and I actively promote that if you ever want to start your own talk show, do pre-interviews. It makes the show better, so much better. The pre-interview has had iterations. There's been bits and pieces that have changed the way I ask questions. There are certain bits that, if it sounded like some of the things I was saying were witty, it's probably because I've said them many times and found things that work. I don't like to say that pre-interview is scripted on my part, but there's certain spiels and things that I think are important to get to every time with every guest, and that I found phrasing that is fun and easy to remember for me at the very least. So that's half rehearsed for me at this point.
Yeah,
But
and
also, I can look back. I know I'm a better host and interviewer now than I was when I started. It's, again, looking back at your old content, just, oh, man.
yeah.
Oh, no.
But
Oh, man.
it's good to look at because you can see how far you've come and how much you've grown as like a streamer, as a content creator, and it's great. It's cringy as frick, like it's so cringy, but you're like, man, I am so much better than I was back then. Holy cannoli.
And that's the growth of just
Yep.
being able to, through practice, that you don't get it overnight. Iron Mouse did not get where she was overnight.
No,
Callie,
no.
you know, certainly she's grown in the years she's been with Hololive, and that
Yep.
she grew as a artist. As you know, she didn't just wake up one day knowing how to rap as well as she did.
No.
That's years. Like
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the way that she writes her stuff, that's all practice. That's all it is. And you know, it sounds so trite. It sounds so yes, practice. It's because it's true. That's just how it is.
Exactly. It sounds like the most like okay, I mean, yeah, I could have figured that like myself, but it's like, yeah, but do it.
Yeah, but
Just do it.
But do it, and remember, that's why things are the way they are, and that
Yeah.
you know, even if you have folks who maybe start streaming and get very quick success streaming, it's because they've built up other skills that were tangential or very naturally lent themselves to streaming. That
Yes.
you know, perhaps you know, those with outgoing personalities who are, you know, more extroverted might have, you know, that's the closest bit of, okay, one might be predisposed in a way to streaming or content creation. That alone certainly does not make one a successful content creator.
No, definitely not. Because you can be an extremely outgoing person, but your content can fall flat. And sometimes, like, there have been situations where, like, the person is extremely extroverted and they're able to hold up a conversation, but the person becomes obnoxious during, like, in front of an audience. It's like they're overacting. I have seen cases of that happening, and it's like, I know you're not like this, like, off camera. Why are you doing this in front of an audience? You could be a very delightful person to watch, but you put on this persona that feels like it's hindering your growth. And I've seen cases of that, and it's kind of, it's sad, but it puts like an example on what you're saying, how even if you're extroverted, that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to succeed. It really doesn't.
Yeah, there's so many factors, and again, it's just, you know, practice makes a difference. And one phrase I'm really fond of isn't practice makes perfect, practice makes habits. That you can practice poorly, and you will make very poor habits, and that iteration in and of itself is half the work of it, certainly, but you need to be a bit mindful and actually remember, okay, what did go well, what didn't go well, and but at the same time, usually those things are relatively self-evident. That certainly, if you are the type that is able to do good data analysis, that I know a lot of folks that have curated their content and gotten it down to a science because they've, you know, gone into the data and figured out, okay, if I do this, this, and this, that gets numbers, and that I'm, you know, there's a difference between finding in data what among the things that you enjoy perform best and bending over backwards to do things that you think will get numbers. That, all right, you know, if I enjoy doing things A, B, and C, but I notice, well, if I do thing A, that a lot more people seem to tune in and enjoy that tending towards thing A, if you were going to enjoy that anyways, along with B and C, makes sense. And I know a lot of people that have, you know, worked at that data analysis, and that can do a thing, or just simply being aware and thinking, okay, yeah, that stream felt really good. I know I did this, that, and the other today, or okay, today kind of fell flat because maybe it's something as simple as I was tired. I should have, or you know, I was hungry. I should have remembered to eat before going on stream, things of that nature. And just iterating that way, it makes a big difference.
There's also outside factors that can play into why your stream didn't do as well as the past. Because, like, there have been days where it's like, oh, I did really well last week on this day. Why did I not do as well today? And then you got to look at, like, okay, what day is it? Is there an event happening today?
There's a million and two things.
Yeah, exactly. You have to take a lot of things into consideration, and there are times where it's genuinely just not your fault.
Yeah,
it's not. So
and to an extent, just like you mentioned, because of those outside factors, to an extent, it is impossible to get pure data, because every day there is so many things, whether it be, okay, Super Bowl was a couple weeks ago, or, you know, is there an agency debut, or is there you know, some other event going on, or perhaps there's really bad weather in one area, and that could either mean, okay, people are inside and watching more streams, or there's really bad weather and means a bunch of people are out of power and not tuning into streams at that hour. And it is impossible to account for all of these variables, and sometimes you'll even get false positives or false negatives of, you might think maybe this is why a thing did well or did not, and then if you do it again, you might see, oh wait, the thing changed, or maybe it persisted in a way that actually conflicts with your initial assumption. And there's so much data, but also lack of data. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And like you said, with the, like, you know, the false positives, the false negatives, if you keep on looking at those numbers and trying to go for something that is going to increase your numbers, you're gonna burn out. You're gonna be tired of what you're doing. Like, do what you enjoy. It all comes back to doing what you enjoy, because if you're having fun with what you're doing, at the end of the day, the numbers won't matter as much. You're not going to be as bothered because you had fun. And
or
people recognize when you have fun.
If nothing else, making sure that you're having fun and not burning out means that you will be able to continue doing this for the long game to eventually maybe find that thing that works.
Yes.
It's just, you know, sort of survive to fight another day, as it were.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a lot that goes into content creation as a whole. A lot.
And gosh, I feel like I'd be remiss. There was a couple of quick things I did want to discuss, because I think they do actually sort of lend themselves here.
Sure.
I know you're really into Pathfinder and TTRPG.
Yeah.
And I legitimately feel that TTRPG experience is one of the biggest sort of formative experiences for a content creator, because if you are able to do good roleplay, good organization of that type, I think there's a lot of soft skills that, you know, I hate to sound sort of like businessy, but there's a lot of things that translate and that very easily lend themselves to content creation, both in the organizational aspect, but also just in the being live performance aspect. And I'm curious for you, do you find that you have a particular, is there a play style or a class that you tend towards in TTRPGs, that you find yourself, you know, being the healer, the rogue, anything like that?
It'll come as a big shocker to you, but I tend to gravitate towards sorcerer. Which
I had to ask the question, but because you never know, because every so often you'll get it. Well, actually, you know, it totally goes opposite to my design, but I love playing barbarian. That every so often I will get that. I do need to ask just in case, but every so often as well, it's the answer was right in front of you.
It was right there. No, okay, so it's sorcerer in Pathfinder 2E. I feel is very versatile with like the magic and the casting and everything. And the action economy in Pathfinder is not the same as in D&D. It's you get 3 actions and you can do whatever you want with those 3 actions. You can cast 3 spells, you could move 3 times, you can do whatever the hell you want with those 3 actions. And in D&D, you've got a an attack, a movement, and what was the third one? Your bonus action. But like in Pathfinder, especially like as a caster, with your action economy, yeah, you get a lot more flexibility, and I think that's what I like about Pathfinder, especially since as a caster, you can have like single action spells, 2 action spells, and 3 action spells. And the higher the spell is, the more powerful the spell is, the more actions it's going to take to cast. Which makes sense. But what's fun about Sorcerer is that it's not like the other caster classes in which you have to what is it like? You have to make sure that your spells are like set. Prepared, exactly. Like I have been able to like not worry about spells. That's what it is. So the spells that you have, like as like any other caster than Sorcerer, you have a certain amount of those spells that you can cast. For example, if I have Fireball and freaking Magic Missile and like any other spell, I can only use them as they are in that section. For example, if I have 1 Magic Missile in that section, if I have 1 Fireball and then 1 whatever heal or like a restoration, I can only cast those a single time. Exactly. Yeah. Those are the other classes. But as a sorcerer, I will have I will be able to cast four spells in, for example, like 4 level 1 spells, okay, during combat or during one day. And I can, but the thing is with the sorcerer is I can recast a spell that I've already cast. I am not able to do that with other classes unless I put 2 magic missiles in there, or I put 2 fireballs in my prepared spells. Whereas a sorcerer, you don't have to do that. You have 4 spells that are in your first level spells or whatever level spells you have. You can recast whatever spell you want out of those 4.
That's how D&D generally works. That there's a couple of classes where you need to prepare your exact spell list, but even then, that you generally have what are called spell slots. So it's you can use 3 level 1s, 2 level 2s, and a level 3 each day, and that the number of prepared spells you have will generally exceed the number of spell slots you have, and you always have the option to upcast a spell. So I could cast Magic Missile, which is a first level spell at 3rd level, and it's going to do extra damage and whatnot, and that I have that flexibility there. But that Pathfinder, while it allows greater action economy flexibility, it sounds like it has less flexibility in spell economy.
Not really. So like for example, if you're, if you've got like casting level up to like level 5, spell level 5, you have 4, you have 4 spells for each spell level that you have in your thing. You can cast all of those. You don't have a mana pool, basically. You don't have a limited amount of spells that you can cast, like in total. It's for each level. For example, if I run out of spells in my spell level 5, I can just move to my spell level 4 that I have prepared.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Okay, so that is the same in a lot of ways then.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that I much prefer the action economy in Pathfinder because I can do whatever the hell I want for those 3 actions. I can attack 3 times. I can run 3 times. I can move twice and then attack.
Yeah, it's I'm already where I need to be. I don't need to move at all.
Exactly.
And if I have this time conceptually that I could have moved and attacked, why can't I just attack twice?
Yep, exactly. And I feel like that's kind of why I enjoy Pathfinder so much. And because I don't see, now this is another thing. I don't know if it's because of the GM that we have, but it, like, the way that I've been playing Pathfinder 2E with the group that I've been with for, like, the past 3 years, it lends itself so well to roleplay, and it is not, like, purely combat focused. You can go very combat focused with Pathfinder 2E, but you can also go much more roleplay heavy than combat. You could spend an entire session with no combat and just roleplay. And even during the roleplay, obviously you're going to have your dice rolls to see if you can, you know, do certain things.
There's still
it doesn't mean
a lot
that
of mechanics there. Yeah.
Exactly. And I love that versatility and that flexibility in Pathfinder 2E that I don't seem to get as much in D&D. And again, I don't know if that has to do with the GM or not, but
because I do feel there's a fair bit of that in D&D that I know, at least with the DM that I have, that we definitely have a couple sessions every so often that are just full-on roleplay sessions, and that certainly there are certain classes that have more RP-based abilities, that bards, for example, paladins, something that's sort of charisma-based in stats, are generally going to have abilities, whereas, you know, if you're a barbarian or a warrior, that you might have an intimidation ability or two that could be relevant in RP scenarios, but not as many other things past your stats, which, you know, you have your base charisma checks, intimidation checks, insight checks, persuasion, performance, things of that nature, that there are plenty of RP-based just general stats and abilities, and I like 5e a lot better than 3.5 because 3.5 had just too many. It went overboard, that it was so overly granular, and the amount of different things that I think it was very nicely streamlined for 5e, but at the same time, I don't have enough experience with Pathfinder to really say the major differences, but I can also see how part of it might be just based on your GM, and that's something as well, of just not only for what the players are able to really be able to vibe with, but the GM as well, that if a GM finds that they can run a better game in one system versus another, that should absolutely be a big consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't just marry yourself to a single system because that's, like, you know, what you're used to, and it's like, oh no, like this is the module I'm always gonna play. I'm never gonna play any other module ever. Blah blah blah. Like, there's situations, there are like campaigns and stories and stuff that fit better for, you know, for other types of systems. Like, there are systems that work better for different scenarios. Like, for example, like Pathfinder might not work so well with like a story or a setting that someone else has like imagined. I've not run into that issue yet. With Pathfinder 2E, I've played like, you know, kitchen sink fantasy. I've played an 80s style fantasy. I've played a modern fantasy. I've played, like, there have been so many different settings that I have played in Pathfinder 2E, and it worked every single time.
I appreciate that you used the phrase kitchen sink fantasy.
Yeah.
Because it took me like a half second to process that, and it was like, oh, yes, it's everything in the kitchen sink.
Your typical, like, you know, like high fantasy campaign. Yeah.
But because at first I was like, wait, does she mean, like, you know, it's sort of a kitchen table campaign? I played at a house and not at a game. No, kitchen sink. That's very deliberate. Oh, she meant it. But at the same time, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. It only took me a half second to go through that mental process. And as soon as I was like, oh wait, that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like that's basically my opinion on those different. Of course, I have not. There are a lot of different systems that I have not played.
There's so many. Like
there's so many. There's
my
so many
group
out there.
there was a Star Wars one. They had these weird dice that they're specialty dice that have different face symbols, so they're not number based. That I think they have numbers in the corners for. There's a small subset of rolls that you do for numbers, but most are based on successes and failures, and it's a differential system. So certain dice, like if it is a easy check that you roll these green dice, and they might have 4 successes, 1 failure, 1 blank. There's some others that have like success, failure, and then either like a forcing or sort of a specialty thing, and then it's a differential. So if I roll 3 successes, 2 failures, I have 1 success, and that it's gauged off of that. That is, it is a slight success. So that might be sort of like 11, 12 if your DC check was a 10. That yes, you succeeded. It might not have been anything special, but then if you roll, okay, I roll all successes, differential 6 successes if I was rolling 6 dice or something like that. That that's beyond critical hit type of scenario. Something incredible has happened. And that there's a lot of flexibility for the DM actually in that system, because there's from what I understand, checks of okay, you need like at least this many successes to actually do the thing, but then there's certain types of flexibility in there.
Yeah. Doesn't that make the odds a lot less in your favor though?
I don't know, because I haven't seen the back, but I have to imagine that it sort of shakes out. In that there's certain circumstances where a single failure isn't something catastrophic, that maybe you hit it, but maybe something also sort of like went awry in the process. I've only played 1 campaign with it, so I can't speak to it too much, but it's so different and it's very interesting. And that I know there's a lot of systems out there.
Yeah, there definitely are. I find them all really interesting in like their own way. There are some that are a lot more intimidating than others, because of like number games and math and all that stuff. But there are websites now that make it easier to handle that stuff. For Pathfinder 2E, we use Foundry, and Foundry is an amazing website that gets rid of the entire headache of having to calculate and like add and multiply and whatever all of your numbers and all that stuff. It's all
we
there.
Use that for our D&D campaign as well. We used Roll20 for a bit, moved to Foundry in the past like 9 months, year-ish, relatively recently, and that and Roll20 before, just online tabletop scenarios are so nice, because yes, it makes things so easy that you put in the formula once, you click a button, and you see it all. It's not just that it spits out a single number, but it'll spit out the number bolded, highlighted, and then you can mouse over it and see, all right, these are all the variables. You can see that the math was done right. You can find things, you can set up your character sheets. It's so nice. It takes work to be able to actually set it up, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely, because it makes things a lot more easy, and you just get in there and you just play. You don't have to worry about like keeping track of like your health and like how many spell points you have left, or like what your stats are at the moment. It's fun because everything is just they just keep track of it for you. It's great.
Yeah, that if you use a spell and you have 3 spells, that it'll take 1 pip off the thing and do that automatically. But oops, I didn't mean to click that. That I can just click that pip and refill it again.
Yeah.
That it's not going to log you, and it's a very nice UI.
Very, very good.
We've been at this now for almost 3 hours. Actually, in post, this has been about a 2.5-hour show. Yes, definitely. There was not 15 minutes to start of the show where everything was on fire. Don't worry about it, YouTube. By the way, hi YouTube. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Content creation. I'm good at it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Follow on Twitch.
And if you aren't following me, you should absolutely follow Alphena for some crazy reason you aren't doing so already.
Oh, thank you. I try to keep things entertaining over on my space as well.
Well, I think you very much succeed, and I think you succeeded tonight as well. I have just a couple of last questions that I ask
Yeah.
all my guests. First being, do you have any goals for the year? That we are still early in 2024, so I know you mentioned that you're going to be doing a redesign. Do you have anything else that you're really looking forward to in terms of either projects or goals that they don't need to be related to numbers at all? It could just be a project of, I want to do this type of stream, or I want to get a cover out, or anything like that. Is there something you're hoping to do before the end of the year?
Yes. I think I spoke about this back in January over on Twitter, that I kind of want to start putting out like short, not kind of like vlog style videos on YouTube, because my current channel, my YouTube channel right now is dedicated only to VODs and some shorts, and that's it. I feel like I don't have enough content on YouTube, and I want to put out short videos that are more than, just shorts from streams and then my VODs. I want it to be original stuff that I have drawn, actually, not just a video of me talking, but stuff that implicates my art as well. Because
I get to any of your art. You sent me a whole bunch of art, and we just wound up on everything else.
That's okay. That's totally fine. But yeah, I think besides my 2.0 that is going to be sometime in June, I want to start putting out like little short videos. Like they're either going to be rants or like little advice videos or like experience videos and stuff like that, involving me just talking, and then just little art pieces that work with what I'm describing, essentially. Like a little cinematic, basically.
Yeah, awesome. Also,
Yeah.
I missed a couple follows. Kavix, Lyschik19th, and Kocho, thank you for the follows. Be sure to follow Alphena as well. So that sounds great. I'm really looking forward to the re-debut. It sounds like you said, so June, so not right around the corner, but
No.
in the works, and that I know a lot of work goes into that. That even just for this thing, that for me getting my model was a process, and even now that we talk about growth, that I'm looking forward to looking back now, and I know I'm still getting used to this whole thing. Because that's just another part of, on top of all the crazy content creation things that you have to do, that I think it was Takahata 101 who said, VTubing is just content creation with extra steps. That
Yep.
The tech, the scuff, just how to operate a model, everything. There's so many other pieces and considerations and things that can go wrong, but also things that can go right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like we spoke about this even before we went live, but you can turn scuff into an entertaining part of your stream as well, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
You got to play it off. You can't show that you're in distress.
Yeah, or at the very least, make it entertaining distress. Just it's like, oh no, everything's on fire. Don't let it get you down. That yes, I've been like, oh god, but that's because I'm trying to be like, I'm playing it up a bit.
Exactly, of course.
You see some people when stuff happens that they just get really, really discouraged, or just they get in a bad mood, that it can really bring down the stream.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able to spin it, that if nothing else, you can get people to laugh at with you in a way that you are comfortable with it, and that you can just make it into a gag a bit, but also at the same time, when you're taking it in stride, it's easy to move on from it. It's so much easier of just, okay, well, I had to put things in mono for tonight.
Yeah.
And that after we finish up, I'm gonna have to figure out, okay, what's actually wrong? Did one of my cables break? Am I gonna need to figure something out? But, we made it work. We made it work for today, and that's fine.
Yes. We managed.
Yes. And I suppose that brings us very nicely to the last question that I ask all my guests, and that is, what does being a VTuber mean to you? And that's not what is the definition of a VTuber, but different people get different things from VTubing. I've had folks say, being a VTuber lets me get in touch with my inner child. It lets me be someone I can't be in real life. I've had others who have a more clinical approach of, I'm an entertainer and it is a tool in my toolbox, that I could do content creation other ways, but I think that I'm able to be more entertaining as a VTuber, and that even if I don't have a deep personal connection with my model, I wouldn't want to perform without it, that I enjoy this costume, this mask that I wear, and that those are pretty distant responses, and that there are things in between and even beyond. So for you, Alphena, what does being a VTuber mean to you?
For me, being a VTuber means being able to come out of my shell a lot more. I found that since becoming a VTuber, I have found confidence in myself that I didn't think I had. And I think that's very huge, because self-confidence issues have been a massive, massive thing for me ever since I was a kid. It's just been ingrained in my brain. And at the same time, if I'm able to, just make someone's day by entertaining them and taking them away from like whatever issues that they're having at that time in life, whether it be like you had a shit day at work, or like you got some bad news like from like a family member or a friend and all that. If I'm able to cheer someone up with whatever shenanigans I'm up to on stream, I that is the most fulfilling thing. It feels so good to see people tell me, Alphena, thank you for streaming today because I really needed this.
Aww.
And that is the most heartwarming thing, and that's what VTubing means to me. It's being able to make others happy, and at the same time, like as I said, I myself am also benefiting from it, because I also feel more confident in who I am, because I see that I'm able to help people.
I always ask at the end of the show because it helps sort of put a bow on things, but also, like I mentioned, there's certain things of consistency for people in their interests and the way that they carry themselves, and the things that we talked about earlier in the show about just what you are able to do in content creation to prevent burnout, to make sure that you're having a good time, and that you clearly have a very healthy mentality about things, and that the responses I get, while I never know necessarily what they exactly will be, I feel they always make sense, and that yours certainly does as well. Just you looking to have a good time, like you said, and that for you, others being able to have a good time means that you're having a good time, and that's very similar to me as well. That for me, it's the guest having a good time. That if the guest is able to come on and have fun, and even if there's nobody in chat, even if it ends up being just the two of us, that if we're able to have a fun conversation, that they walk away being like, that was a fun couple of hours of just talking, even if there was nothing gained at all, or if there was nobody else necessarily entertained, that I'm able to make sure that the guest is entertained with the conversation. If I'm able to get that, then that's success for me, and that for you it is very similar, that my audience, so to speak, is the guest, and that your audience is, well, your audience.
Yep. No, that makes absolute sense. I totally get it. That's pretty much exactly like the same thing for me. So yeah.
But again, I cannot thank you enough. I really do appreciate it. I do actually have one last question. That's, who would you like us to raid?
Oh, goodness.
I'll let you look around for that while I do some last housekeeping. So again, for everybody in chat, whether you just got here or if you were here from the start, thank you so much for tuning in. If you aren't already following Alphena, please be sure to do so. If you're interested, you can follow me here on Twitch and Twitter. It's just Vtuber Talk both places. Like I mentioned, I don't really have a set schedule, a consistent schedule, but I do these roughly once a week. I actually just had about 3 weeks off because things were busy, but I'm about to get back into things. There will be a couple of specialty streams coming up because I have some of the other charity marathon rewards to pay off. I need to do a dramatic reading of the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie. I am working on my first ever cover of Big Iron, and that's one of the other things of why I need to make sure that my microphone is working, because if it's not, that's going to be annoying, but we'll figure it out. And I think that about does it. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, well, you can't do this to me, Alphena. Give me two great options like that? How am I supposed to choose?
Well, I mean, they're both playing the same game, and that is why I was like, man, I don't know who to go see. I love them both. So whichever one you feel most comfortable, just throwing everyone toward.
I think I'm pretty sure that I've raided Grimmy at least once before.
Okay.
Frankly, I think I may have raided Nio as well in the past. The two that...
Oh, really?
So I'm not entirely sure, but I know off the top of my head that I've definitely raided Grimmy. So I'm going to send us over to Nio, but absolutely love Grimmy. We were talking about Grimmy the other day because she recently announced her not graduation. And we are very excited to have many more years of Grimmy. She's absolutely wonderful. She was part of the charity marathon a couple weeks back. She's absolutely delightful. So do be sure to... I'm just going to give her a shout out there.
Yeah.
Definitely do follow Grimmy. She's amazing. But, let's send folks over to Nio. You said they're playing the same game. I'm going to take a actual shot in the dark here. Because my guess is that you would go with a game that you've been playing, and I know that Grimmy's been playing it too, so it's probably Voices of the Void.
Yes!
Yes!
So obsessed with this game.
Well, also, it's just so on brand for you that your whole thing is Void Witch. Like,
yes!
This was a layup for you.
Yep. I had to play it. I had to play it. Yep.
Yes. But again, thank you, Alphena. Thank you to everybody in chat. This has been Vtuber Talk. Thank you again so much. Tell Nio that we all say hi and let her know that Alphena sent you. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.